To the ordinary meeting of council for the 25th of August 2021. I'll now declare the meeting open at 9 a.m. Welcome councillors and welcome staff. Welcome to members of the community joining us in the gallery today. Thank you for your attendance. Welcome Father Chook. We're very blessed to have you here as always. Thank you. Do we have any requests for leave of absence or any apologies? Okay, let's move on then. We'll now call on Father Chook to provide the opening prayers. Thank you, Father.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It's always a privilege, to be here. Whether you are a religious person or not, I just wanted to reflect on this, that I see this time as, or what I'm doing as an opportunity for us to show you as a council, that we are with you, and that we appreciate what you do, and that we value what you do. So I want to say a huge thank you to each and every one of you for the great work that you do for our people. And one thing that we have in common is that we have the good of our community and our people at heart. So I want to say a huge thank you to each and every one of you. This morning I just want to read from the prophet Micah. From the Bible, Micah chapter 6, verse 8. So he has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Now, I chose this last night, actually, because I think it captures, like I said before, what you do and what we do as a community. So if there's one thing I want you to actually to take with you as you deliberate on issues, on things that for our good here in our community, it is that, to try and act justly for the good of everybody, and to love, to have love at the heart of everything and every decision that we make, and also to walk humbly, and if we walk humbly, yes, people will actually appreciate what we do, and then we can be able to, to move people along with us. So, so my prayer for each and every one of you today, as we make this, as we continue to meet, is that the good Lord will be with you as you continue to lead our South Bonnet Council to be the best place ever. Can I just ask you if you are comfortable to say the Lord's Prayer with me as I finish? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. So, Heavenly Father, I ask your blessings on this meeting, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Father. Father, we understand that you have a busy day. You're quite welcome to stay for our meeting, but we'll understand if you need to leave and go about your very important work in God's name. Thank you again, and God bless. Now call on Councillor Duff to deliver the recognition of our traditional owners. Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to acknowledge country and the traditional owners of the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka people, and acknowledge the elders both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillors, item 5, it's opportunity to provide disclosures in relation to any prescribed or declarable conflicts of interest in relation to matters listed on the agenda for today's meeting. Does any councillor wish to disclose such at this point in time? We'll move on then, thank you councillors, to item 6, and it's our pleasure to welcome to Chamber this morning Mr. Brett Heading and Mr. Stuart Nicholson to provide a deputation into West Baramba Weir feasibility. And so, gentlemen, I'd like to now invite you to come up to the lectern, and we have a 15-minute presentation such. And if you could just introduce yourselves and give us a little bit of background about yourself for those in the gallery and who don't know, and then we'll move into your presentation. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Brett Heading. Our family's been in the district for 115 years. Susan and I, Susan's in the gallery, have Bramber Station, Clovelly Estate, the Olive Grove at Moffatdale, and we've got our original family property at Cloyna. So we've got a diversified agribusiness operation. I'm a lawyer by my day job is as a lawyer and company director as well. So that's my background. This is actually the third time the council's indulged me to talk about water, which is such an incredibly important issue in the South Burnett. We're now on a zero allocation, and the Sunwater invoices still arrive like clockwork. And there is nothing more galling in life, I find, than paying for something when you get nothing for it. I've only got 7 points to make in my allocated time, and then Stuart Nicholson's going to talk about the technical aspects of the project. The first point is I have spoken to Deb Frecklington, and I respect Deb very highly, and I've been on the record many a time that she should have been given the opportunity to be Premier, and I think she would have been a fine one. We've still got the Deb Frecklington sign outside Bramber Station, so when I say to people who are visiting us at Bramber Station, I say, turn right at the Deb Frecklington sign. I wish more people had done that in the past. She's very supportive of the feasibility study being undertaken, so I want to put that on the record, and she gave me permission to quote her on that. Second point is population growth, unemployment, drugs and other social issues are very important issues in the South Burnett. And they're all related, in my view, to opportunities and jobs. And in the COVID era that we're in, regional Australia is becoming the new black. Regional Australia is now sexy. It wasn't before. And I think private enterprise and councils and governments need to take advantage of that and really ride the wave that we're on at the moment. But what is holding us back is water. My third point are success stories. There are some wonderful success stories in the South Burnett. This is not all doom and gloom. The Swickers, Smithfields, Crumptons, the Bishop family, Joe Prendergast in the Moffatdale area. These are all great success stories. Why won't there be more? And the answer is water. Fourth point, the South Burnett is, in my view, an unpolished gem. There's no reason why the South Burnett cannot be regarded as a Australian recognised food and wine region. Like Orange and Mudgee. They weren't known as that 15 years ago. It's not going to take 3 generations for that to be achieved. And again, what is holding that back is water security. So that's my fourth point. Capital needs to flow into this district. From my time on the South Burnett Economic Development Committee, the really big concerns were the number of people we have in the region. There's not enough people. We need more people, and COVID can get more people here. I could just see what's happening when I drove up here last night, the number of houses being built, what's happening at Moffatdale. It's an exciting, exciting time. But but you need to have capital following the people so you can give people jobs. There's a lot of the people who are coming here, and I spoke to someone yesterday on the way up in the car who's left the Sunshine Coast to come to the South Burnett region, has got a degree in hotel management out of Canada, and now looking for a job. So these are really skilled people that are coming here. So what you want now is the capital to flow so that there's more Swickers, more Prendergasts coming. And the problem is we do not have water security. We want to see people growing higher value crops. So Ashley Lewis, next door to our Oakhurst property, it'd be great to see him growing broccoli or capsicums or onions or garlic, rather than necessarily growing lucerne. These are all higher value crops. And we've seen now at the airport at Toowoomba what can be done. Now you've got the ability to export overseas so easily. But we have an average 35% reliability of water out of Bjelke-Petersen Dam. Now, they're the facts. You can look at stuff the Sunwater put out, but that's always calculated at the end of the year. It's been a 35% average reliability, and Stuart will talk about that more. My sixth point, this West Baramba proposal was mooted in the 40s, and then was mooted again in the 90s, and then it was only touched upon by the Jacobs report. So this has been going on a long time. So it'd be good to finally have a proper report done and decide once and for all whether it has legs or not. And I don't want you to think this is something that's just going to benefit the Boffindale area, because it's not. Because if you've got a first release water storage that can be released down the Baramba at the right times and not being relied on the BP dam, which has proved to be completely unreliable. That's the facts. If I'd known how unreliable it was going to be, my group would have never invested the money that we'd invested in all those vineyards and olive groves. It's cost us a lot of money because we haven't had water security. So that's the advantage of, and it'll benefit people down at Baillie growing cotton. It'll benefit everybody in the area. So my final point, number 7, is that I'm confident if the feasibility study stacks up, and it's got to stack up. It's got to produce the economic benefit, and that's why you need the feasibility report. I'm confident that the state government will be supportive from my own private inquiries that I have made. And from my own private inquiries, I'm very confident that the federal government is going to be incredibly supportive of this, because there is money available for water projects that are going to create opportunities in regional Australia. So I'm looking forward to the day where this region, the region that my grandfather came to in 1905, that we've got a region that Australia talks about as a food and wine region. And we're never going to get there, and certainly not in my lifetime, and that's what we're trying to achieve, unless we have the water situation better than it is today. Now, I look so proudly at what the Farm to Fork Collective is doing, and the publicity they're now getting, showing all the wonderful produce that we're producing in this region. It is just fantastic, just fantastic. But it could be multiplied if we can get the water fixed. So I really do urge every councillor here to take Deb Frecklington's lead. She's supportive of the feasibility study. I'd like you to as well. I thank you for listening to me once again. Stuart, over to you.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Stuart Nicholson. My background, I grew up on a farm in Zimbabwe growing tobacco and cotton farm. I formerly studied hydrology, did a master's in water resources. I've been involved in irrigation design and research in Zimbabwe and in the UK, and now since 2003 in the South Burnett. I live in Wandai, and I'm now running my own small business in Wandai. What I just want to present is that we have a bit of an opportunity here. We have, as a water resource in the South Burnett, we have 4 main river sources. We have the Boyne, which flows into Bunduma Dam. We have the Stuart, which goes Gordon Brook and then Bunduma. We have Barker's Creek, which goes into the Bjelke-Petersen Dam, and we have the Baramba Creek, which has nothing on it. Now, the Baramba catchment at Litsos, which is just about exactly where we're proposing to put in a barrage. The last study that I've been able to get information from, it had a mean annual discharge of just over 60,000 megalitres. The Barker's Creek, 51,000 megalitres. So about 20% more than what's going into Barker's Creek, into Bjelke-Petersen Dam. So it's a significant river. The other thing about it is that it has a completely different hydrology from the other 3 rivers. The other 3 are all, the headwaters are sourced around the Bunyas, and that's the only one that's not from that same thing. So it has different flows, it has more reliable annual flows, and it also has bigger flows. I think the last 20 years total inflow into Bunduma has been 188,000 megs a year. So it's a significant river. It's a very significant river, and we have nothing on that is capturing that water. So I'm current chairman of the Barker-Baramba Irrigator Advisory Committee. We have about 160 entitlements, medium priority entitlements on that. And that includes the Millwood Water Board, which in itself has about 100 customers. Additional water to that is it supplies water for the councils, for Cherbourg, for Mergen, for Wandai, and for Mondial. So it's a very, very important water source for us. From also in that area, just one other point here, 10 to 15% of Swigger's pigs supplied from that area. Medium priority is supplied in two parts. The part A, which is the majority, is about 80% of the charge, is a fixed charge, which people pay regardless. And the balance is an actual usage charge, but that's only a very small percentage. And that's, if they use it, they pay for that. So the vast majority of the money that they're paying is a fixed charge, whether that water is supplied or not. Now, as Brett said, our reliability since 2003, it's running at about 35%. Stated official figures are 76%. That 76% is calculated on the final quarter of the year. So as the allocation gets to an end, every quarter the allocation is reworked, and we end out every year with getting a big jump in allocation in April, end of the water year in June, or 1st of July. So we get the sudden big spike of water at the end of the year, which is actually after the summer growing season and before the winter growing season. It's a pretty meaningless thing, but it skews the figures massively. The figures that I've given you have got all the allocations. You can see that's what we're actually living with. Okay, for this, what we're proposing is some sort of a barrage at a point called 188.8 kilometers. It's about roughly 3 kilometers west of the bridge on the Baramba on the Gameri to Nananga Highway. It's on land owned by Brett Heading, and the inundation would actually be on his land. So that's important that we have him on side, be agreeable to that. We're not looking at a really massive barrage there. We're looking at something in the order of 15 meters that would hold back approximately 10,000 megs. But again, this is going to have to be refined with a proper study. There's been a lot of work done there since the earliest surveys I found of that dam site is 1942. Several reports since. It's always been a kind of something that looks good but's never happened. Now, there's also, I think, a bit of people have a perception that Jacobs did a study on this. Jacobs were actually due to come and talk to the people in the area, and that consultation never happened. It was shut down 2 days before it was due to happen because of COVID, and then it got cancelled. It never happened. So it never actually got raised and put onto the table with that. So yeah, that's why it's not hasn't really been highlighted. Yeah, apart from the other thing is for the use of the water, we actually have everything in place already. Because we've only got 35% allocation, there's a lot of infrastructure on farm sitting in place, ready to go, underutilized. All the pumps are there. There's no need for building massive infrastructure. There's no need for pumping. There's no need for channels. It's gravity fed system straight down the creek. Yeah. I think that's all my real points on that. I think it's something that we can do, we should do, and it needs to be done. Just a little point of thought, a missed opportunity. Before Bjelke-Petersen Dam was built, there was a opportunity to build a different dam there. It would have been in the gorge just above Sherburg. It would have flooded a bit of land, but that dam would have been a 34-meter dam, exactly the same height as the Bjelke-Petersen Dam, except it would hold 307,000 megalitres. That's 7,000 megalitres more than Paradise. We could have had that in our area. It was put off, and we're now in the situation we're in. We've got to act when we can. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Brett. Okay, well, thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 7.1, minutes of the council meeting held on the 20th of July 2021, can be found at 8 in the agenda. Recommendation is that the minutes be received and the recommendations therein be adopted. Do we have a mover? Councillor Froeloff, seconder Councillor Potter. Questions, concerns, issues arising? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay. Councillor Duff.
Mr Mayor, I would like to move a procedural motion. Given that we've got the water guys in the room, that's Stuart Nicholson and Brett Heading, that we move items 13.3 and 16.1 be moved up and addressed as the next items on the agenda.
Do we have a seconder for such? I'll second the motion. So the motion is that items 16.1, items 13.3 in relation to NWIDF Phase 2, item 16.1 in relation to the notice of motion on NWIDF funding Phase 2. The procedural motion is that they get moved up to the agenda and are dealt with as the next item. Go to the vote. Those in favour? Those in favour, Councillor Jones, Councillor... Sorry, you have everyone in favour? Okay, thank you, councillors. That's been carried unanimously. As a result, we'll now attend to item 13.3 on the agenda, which is the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund, NWIDF, Phase 2, and is at 195. Councillor Duff.
Yes, Mr Mayor. So I would like to move the officer's recommendation with the following change to item 6. Completion of a hydrological...
We'll just wait for Tracy to get on the spot there and we'll get you to type that in, Tracy, if you can, perhaps down the bottom, and then we can perhaps insert it. Yeah, that's fine, thank you. If we just take that slowly, Councillor Duff, and we'll give Tracy time just to insert that so that all members of the gallery and the chamber can see it on screen. Thank you.
Completion of a hydrological and economic assessment and analysis of the West Baramba catchment on the Barker Baramba water scheme.
Councillor Duff, I'll just get you to clarify your motion again. If you could read that once more, thank you.
Item number 6, completion of a hydrological and economic assessment and analysis of the West Baramba catchment on the Barker-Baramba water scheme.
So, Councillor Duff, you're moving that the officer's recommendation be adopted by council, with item 6 being, as it stands, as presented, being removed and replaced with the item with the text that you've, with your motion has indicated there.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr Mayor.
So removing item 6 and replacing it with what we see on screen. Okay. Deleting current item 6 and adding that one. That is your motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, yes.
Correct. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Okay, so we have the motion put. Do we have a seconder for such? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Councillors, we'll now give Councillor Duff the opportunity to speak to the motion. Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think the West Baramba project should be progressed to the assessment stage alongside the Gordon Brook Dam, the Barley Weir and the Blackbutt Irrigators Water Infrastructure Project. We've heard this morning from Brett Heading and Stuart Nicholson the tremendous opportunities this project would open up for the future of not only the Moffedale area, but indeed our whole region. Hundreds of irrigators along the existing scheme are paying for water currently with zero allocation. This cannot continue if we are to shore up economic viability for the future of this tremendous farming land with its rich fertile soil and hundreds of irrigators depending on it. I would like this motion to be supported, as I think it goes a long way with the 4 projects that are listed, as well as the 25-year economic roadmap, will go a long way to securing our water future if we can get these projects shovel ready and ensure then that when we have an opportunity that we can put these projects to the government we need to get these projects to that stage. And as Brett Heading and Stuart Nicholson have articulated, this is an important part of the whole region's projects because of the, as Stuart said about the actual where the water is coming from and the opportunities to catch that water. So I'd just like to commend all of the projects and that 25-year economic study to the chamber, and I hope you all support the change that I've put forward and indeed the whole recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question through you, Mr Mayor. I'm not too sure who I should aim this at, but what happens if we run out of funding money before we complete all of the projects on the list? Does that have to come out of our money, or where does that money come from?
Mr CEO, the question is that we have 579,000, I believe, left or allocated as the remaining funds. Question from Councillor Potter is that if we run out of money and can't complete projects, where would the additional funding then come from?
Well, that's a good question, Mayor. There is a finite bucket of money in the allocation, so if we overspend, it would be Council's responsibility to match any overspend, I would expect. I would have to double check that, but if any other normal program overspend is Council's responsibility.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Councillor Potter, anything further on that? You're comfortable with that response? Thank you. Councillor Duff, you'll have the right of reply at the end in terms of our process. Thank you. Did you want to answer the question? Respond to the question.
I was just going to answer the question because I have put a notice of motion forward that 129,000 of the balance, which was a contingency, be used for that particular study for the Barker-Baramba West.
Thank you for clarifying for the chamber, Councillor Duff. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Very good presentation, and fully understand Councillor Duff's recommendation and all that, and I don't disagree. I probably along the same lines as Councillor Potter in the fact that how do we fund this? So through you, Mr Mayor, I'd like to ask our acting GM a question in regards to that, in regards to the $129,000, because in discussions that we've had previously, I thought that there was an unknown amount for consultants, all that sort of stuff. I don't know, but I just want to be confident that we have the finances to do this. I fully support what Councillor Duff's saying. I think it's a great idea. If we can get water, and like Brett Heading said, it's he touched on every point. Water is the thing that's holding this region back from progressing as it should, and it should be recognised in Australia as one of the fruit bowls and food bowls and all that sort of stuff. I fully support everything that's been said here, but my concerns are, just to Acting Manager, GM Brennan, maybe a bit more clarification around that 129,000 that's supposedly sitting there available, and what's the requirements moving forward, and does it have an impact on what we're trying to achieve at the current feasibility study moving forward?
Thank you, Councillor Jones. And General Manager, at this stage, what Council's been presented with is information that indicates that we received $579,000, or will be receiving that through the department as the remaining funds from the NWIDF original feasibility study allocation. At this point in time, what we've received is correspondence with the department indicating that we've identified $450,000 worth of projects in relation to that, which includes $300,000 for the 25-year economic roadmap, as well as 3 other projects. That mathematically would indicate that there's $129,000 left that hasn't been identified to Council as to where those funds would be applied. And I think that's your question, Councillor Jones. So just to clarify for you as a lead-in, are you happy to respond to the question, GM? Yes, thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Otto and Deputy Mayor Jones, for the question. The estimated figures that were provided in our proposal back to the state government for the balance of the study were prepared about the middle of last year. At that point in time, the predicted figures for the balance, we predicted at around $350,000, not in full knowledge of what the state government's commitments were. At that point in time, we suggested that Council would have to provide additional funds, and that submission from the Mayor and Council to the state government identified that. During the budget process, however, we did have knowledge of what the balance was, and given the tightness of the operational budget, we did not seek the additional matching funds to go with it. So there is not an operational budget for the support of the project, for any contingency for the project when we actually go to the market and get the price, nor for any change in scope that as the study proceeds we might wish to identify. So in knowledge of what the amount of money was at budget time, we did not seek any operational funds from Council's budget to support it. So on the presumption that those figures that money was available in that amount of money provided. Thank you.
So, Mr. General Manager, there's no allocation in Council's operational funds at this point in time, but can we confirm that there's $579,000 been received from the department, which you're indicating is more than we expected to have left over, and at this point we'd notionally allocated $450,000 based on what we expected we might receive earlier in the piece. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, that's correct, Mayor.
Thank you, General Manager. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and certainly thank you for the presentation this morning. I have a couple of questions before I make any statements on the motion. My first question just is in relation to the Barla Weir, and I would like to understand, it's my understanding that the water plan demonstrated there was over 4,200 megalitres of storage available in that area, and that the Barla Weir could potentially take 3,000 megalitres of that storage from the water plan. So I'd like to understand more about how the Baramba project and what work has been done to understand the impact if we were to proceed with the Baramba project, the impact that may have on water users downstream. Jed, I'd like a bit of an update as to what some of the conclusions from the Jacobs report established in that regard? And my second question is around the Baramba Dam proposal. Just like to understand, certainly I had met with Stuart previously and collected a number of documents at that point in time, which I had delivered to be used in the study by the Jacobs crew. So just like to understand, in terms of that consultation, where were we at with the Baramba Dam proposal? Because I've had a good look through the study and I can find there's a lot of discussion about Baramba Creek in relation to the North Burnett, but little in relation to the South Burnett. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. General Manager.
Mayor Otto, if I could respond to Councillor Shoemaker, and I'd acknowledge the great depth of knowledge that's in this room, particularly in some of the presentations in relationship to the water plan. And I won't attempt to address that subject in full, certainly. However, what I would like to do is explain where we are in this process. We've just finished the second stage of the Building Queensland process, being the options analysis, moving into the second phase, which is taking things towards where we can a shovel-ready status. That process identified our highest priorities, plus a really long list that can be addressed over time. And we had this discussion at committee a couple of weeks ago. To answer Councillor Shoemaker's question, and I will be referring to the advice that was in the options analysis, they referred to the Burnett water plant as identifying limits to available allocation, that's unallocated water, in the Barker-Baramba system. The figure that they identified there was that figure that the Councillor Shoemaker referred to, around the 4,200 megalitres. Figures above that, my understanding from the reading of the options analysis, would impact the lawful rights of existing allocations somewhere in the network. So in reading that options analysis, it forms the basis for our further study and leads us to look at what is physically available from a catchment perspective in hydrology, and also what's lawfully available under the water plan. There's a broad range of actions under that study, which we addressed during committee, one of which is looking at water sharing rules, water harvesting capability and other things, and that is central to the economic roadmap. And they are things that we would pursue. But it is my understanding that there are strong limits specifically on allocation, Mr. Mayor, and hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Shoemaker, are you comfortable with the response?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, General Manager. Keen to hear from other councillors, other speakers. Councillor Jones, you've had an opportunity, but I'll give you a second opportunity on this case. Yeah, please proceed.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just thinking and listening to what Jed has just explained there, I believe that the option that's being asked for is for a feasibility study to be carried out. Is that be a fair comment? And that's what you're indicating, Councillor Duff, with your fancy hydrological wording and all that. So we're looking for a feasibility study. I support the feasibility study. My concerns, and 100% behind the feasibility study, to any way we can get water into this region, I'm all for, because it's been touched on here this morning that it's the ingredient that we're missing here for really rapid economic growth. Is it a possibility, or is it out of the realms of asking the question that if I have concerns around the funding for it and how much feasibility study to this extent would cost, knowing that Somerset and all that sort of stuff, they've spent millions on water feasibility, and I know how much we've put into ours so far. Is it an option to go to our first quarter review, Mr. Mayor, and let some further work go? And I think we're only talking a couple of months in regards to our first quarter review, to sit down and allow the acting GM to really get down into the crux of the expenses, and if we need to find more money, can we review our budget at the first quarter and go from there? Because I fully support the proposal, My concerns are that if we go ahead with what we're doing now unknowingly with what expenses we've got or whatever outstanding or possibly, I'm just throwing an option out there that we get to the first quarter review on our budget and we can all sit down as a group of councillors and maybe if we need extra funding, we can find it somewhere in our budget. Just putting it out there.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Other councillors, Councillor Potter, Councillor Hetchy, Councillor Frodoff, anything to add before we wrap up? No? Councillor Henson, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Brett and Stuart, for your presentation today. As Councillor Jones alluded to, and Councillor Duff, water in our region is gold, and how we get it is it's a endless piece of string, isn't it? I can understand where Councillor Jones is coming from here, and with the feasibility studies that's done, yeah, there is a concern with where that money could come from, and it would be disappointing that if we get to a certain point and there's no funding there, where do we go from there? We've got a thing sitting on the shelf that's, yeah, we can't pursue in some shape or form. And yes, perhaps looking at our first quarter review within the budget, and I'm sure Acting Manager Jed, and that's not far away, we'd have a better direction as to how we can approach that and with what tools and what sort of funding that we could have with that. Just a question, can I direct at perhaps the gentleman at the presentation in the past? The reliability, and it was so true, and I hope the public takes on board, all our major river systems have got something on them bar the Baramba Creek, where they go to be at BP Dam or the Bunduma Dam. We know what the water levels are in those. In the past 8 years, what's the reliability been in flow in that Baramba system as far as, I guess, megalitres or predicted megalitres? Is there a figure on that, how it's been in the past? And I say 8 years going back to the floods in 2013. What's happened in the Baramba in the past eight years?
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Stuart, I might just get you to come back to the lectern through leave of the meeting, and we'll give you 2 or 3 minutes just to respond to that. In relation to your presentation, the question is, what has been the reliability or the pattern of flow in Baramba, and say, for example, in comparison to Barker's or other systems might be a good indicator. Can you clarify that for Councillor Henson? Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the question. I don't have exact figures on what's come down the Baramba, but the Baramba, certainly there's been more flows down the Baramba than the Barkers, and there have been flows down the Baramba every year since the floods. I think our only recorded time that we didn't have a flow down the Baramba was in, it had been about 2005, 2006. There was a season there that there was no flow, but every other year we've had flows of some sort down the Baramba. There's just a couple of things I can kind of pick up, just a couple of other questions here. We have a concern of interference with the impact with Barlil. The catchment where we're looking at putting a barrage on the Baramba is a long way up from Barlil. Barlil is a very small storage in the big picture. It's only 1100 megs. There's a lot of flow that comes out of everything through Redgate, Moffatdale, Wandai, Mergen, all those flow in above Barlil. So there's a massive area that's still flowing that would be caught by Barlil if there was a flow coming down the Baramba that was caught by the proposed barrage. So I don't see it having a significant, it will have a small impact on Barlil, and that'll have to be ascertained in a proper study. But it's certainly, it's well worth having the two on there. The other thing is with extra water, we actually have the design of the Bjelke-Petersen Dam was to take out about 16,000 megalitres to come out of the Bjelke-Petersen Dam, and the balance of the allocation, which is another 16,000 megs, was to come out of the Baramba. Now, because of when that Baramba flows, a lot of that time is during, well, it's during the rainy seasons, and that's not when the demand is. So that water is actually now supplied from the Bjelke-Petersen Dam rather than the Baramba, and the Baramba just flows through because that water is not required at that time. So this is why we're having some of the issues that we're having with reliability is we've got all the demand is going on to Bjelke-Petersen Dam, and the half that should have been from the Bramble, we have no way of actually holding that water to a usable time. So it's not like there's extra allocation needs to be found. We're supposed to have this split between the two sources in the system anyway, which doesn't exist.
Thank you, Stuart. Are you comfortable with the response, Councillor Hitchin? Thank you. All right, we'll have one more opportunity. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the questions and the presentation. This morning certainly serves as a reminder of just how important the work that we're doing really is, how important this study is, and that it doesn't sit on a shelf for the next 40, 50 years. Certainly I hope to see in my lifetime some serious water problems solved in the South Burnett, because we all know it is our biggest inhibitor. I absolutely support all projects that have been identified in the NWIDF study. And what it has found is it's going to take an integrated strategy for the entire South Burnett to really solve the problems of water here in the South Burnett. I believe our job as a council is to be the facilitator and to go to both state and the federal government with projects and proposals that can be funded. So I'm very excited about stage 2 of this work and so grateful that we have some funding to pursue that. I absolutely support council's approach, and in terms of the Baramba project, I would like us to see a focus on that project in that area and do some more work, because clearly this has been something that has been sitting in the backs of the minds of many in our region. And whilst I'm not sure we'll be able to fund or find the entire solution, we must start somewhere. So I'm supportive of adding in this focus point for the next phase of stage 2, as Councillor Duff has identified today. It is my understanding the hydrology, it's one thing to build a dam, and I think it's important to add the hydrology to this study. However, there are a number of logistical problems that will need consideration and solving as we go forward. So, look, I'm actually really supportive of this recommendation. I know we've got a finite budget. I am supportive of all projects that have been recognised, and I absolutely want to see them progressed. So in my view, this is a great start. It puts the Baramba project on the map. It gives us some time and focus to really see what has been done in light of the fact that there may not have been the consultation that really was required in the original Jacob study, and move forward as a region, progress the water conversation for our entire region. So I'm fully supportive of this recommendation and look forward to getting to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Other councillors? No? Okay. Councillor Duff, sorry, Councillor Jones, I think you've had sufficient opportunity. I guess I'll just summarise and then go to Councillor Duff for right of reply to close out the debate. Again, thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. Of councillors, as indicated, we're all very grateful for such, and it's been certainly some good points raised. I suppose in summarising such, what we understand is that the Balliol Weir is an important project that I think we support as a council as being identified on the shortlist. From what Stuart's indicated, will hold 1,100 megalitres and will yield 3,000 megalitres per year from what I've read in the report. Would indicate that this proposal isn't going to provide necessarily significant impact on Balliol, maybe some small impact, but overall could perhaps work hand in hand with Balliol and enabling us to service both ends of the irrigators of the land holdings at each end of the Baramba that's inside our region. I am concerned about the fact that we've got 16,000 megalitres that in the Baramba Creek is flowing up into the North Burnett and further beyond that we aren't able to capture at this point in time, but is actually factored into the 32,000 megalitres that irrigators are supposed to have access to. It would seem to me that that's clearly part of the issue here. in terms of them not getting their allocation. In terms of what's physically and lawfully available, in conversations that I've had with, for example, Damien Sipple, who's heavily involved in irrigation through BGA and has been for many years, the issues aren't not about what's lawfully available in allocation for the group out there, for the irrigators in the area. It's more so about what's physically available, that it's a reliability issue, that there just isn't enough water captured and water available for them to actually be able to use the allocations they're paying for. I actually, just for the benefit of council, produced a report that I have here, and it indicates that over the last 12 months, the levels of, I'll just try to find that report, but the levels of allocations that's been available have been very low. They're 0% at the moment, and I can see at times that they're down as far as 3% or 10%. So the last 12 months has been particularly low. Historically, since the 2013 floods, there haven't been high percentages from what I can see there. The average is probably, as you said, 35%. If this proposal could potentially provide 10,000 megalitres, if we look at Barlett as example, where 1100 megs produces a 3,000 yield, there could be potential for the 10,000 megs here, I would have thought, to compensate for the 16,000 that's flowing out of the system. So in light of that, it certainly does seem to have merit in terms of us pursuing it. We have allocated the 450,000, which does indicate that there could potentially be the $129,000 left there. So yeah, I'm certainly keen, as Councillor Shoemaker's indicated, to see us explore this further. And would on that basis certainly tend to support it as such. So having said that, Councillor Duff, right of reply, and then we'll go to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really keen to support this recommendation. Just wanted to say that I went to the Wheatlands School, and a little boy, they went around the class and asked me questions. And one little boy said, Miss, just wondering what you can do about the fact that my mum and dad, they pay for an allocation of water that they don't get and they can't use. What can I do about that? And I said, well, it's just quite ironic that we're actually discussing water right now. We've just done a study. There's an opportunity to put that Baroomba West project into this study, and that was my answer to him. So I actually thought how obvious it's a huge impact on the family when that reaches right down to a little boy at the Wheatlands School. So this has been going on for a very, very long time, where farmers have been paying for an allocation that they just can't use. This study, along with all of the other studies that we're putting into this, will go a long way in getting these projects shovel ready, so that when there is an opportunity for government funding, that we actually know where we are with these. And the questions that have been raised are valid questions, but the studies will help to answer those. The allocations, how that's going to affect the barley weir, all of those things. We need to get that on the table, out in the open, and I understand the concerns about the allocation of funding, but I agree with Councillor Jones. If there's not enough money, we should do in the first quarter review, allocate the additional money, because it's so important. It's important for the future of our region. This is a big ticket item. The previous mayor said water, and this mayor and this council, water is what's holding our region back. So this is a huge opportunity, and so I just 100% commend this recommendation, this motion to the floor. Thank you.
Okay, councillors, we have the motion as presented on screen. So we'll look to go to the vote. Stuart, I will give leave of meeting for you to clarify one matter quickly, yes, in terms of your deputation, sorry. Thank you, Stuart. Okay, Council, we have plenty of information at hand, and thank you for the productive debate. We'll now go to the vote on this one, councillors. The motion is as presented there on screen. So those in favour? Motion has been carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you all. Okay, item 16.1, notice of motion in relation to the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund, Phase 2. That is at 217. And so I'll just get to the page. Councillor Duff has given notice of a intention to move the motion. We'll have you present that to the meeting. Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Yes, this is my notice of motion. That South Burnett Regional Council allocate the remaining 129,000 of the balance of the NWIDF funds towards the completion of a hydrological and economic assessment and analysis of the West Baramba catchment on the Barker Baramba water scheme.
Okay, do we have a seconder for such? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. We'll now go to debate. Councillor Duff, could you speak to your motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's been covered in the discussions previously, but this funding is unallocated and it's a contingency funding put forward by acting manager GM Jed. But I see this money as a great opportunity to jump in and get the assessment done for the Barker Baramba along with the other projects, and we can, as Councillor Jones has suggested, to use to get some additional capital funding if necessary in the first quarter review. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm fully supportive of using some of the remaining NWIDF funding to progress the discussions around the Barker Baramba water scheme. Absolutely. I'm not comfortable with locking in an amount at this point in time, Councillor Duff. So I'd probably propose an amendment to your motion that would require council to do its homework, actually, for the team to go back to talk with the proponents who will be undertaking the next version, stage 2 of this study, and to come back with us some reasonable costings and an actual scope of works so that we can make an informed decision about this. I'm concerned if we put $129,000 to one specific project, that may or may not be enough, and that there are a number of projects across stage 2, as we've just moved, that we'd like to focus on. I know Barlil has progressed quite significantly, so there's little funding required there, but I'm still very mindful of the situation in Blackbutt with the avocado growers and the many other conversations that we as a council need to be having and advocating for with entities such as Sunwater and SEQ Water and the state around these issues such as water reliability. And certainly what we found through the study was that there are conversations to be had around water rules, allocations, offtakes, and some work that council could do that that won't involve further studies. That's really just recommendations from the report. And it's now our role to go and advocate for those changes in existing frameworks. So my request to you for consideration is that you that we amend the motion. That council further define its scope of works and a report detailing the costs be brought back to council for consideration.
All right, I'm going to be difficult. I'm sorry, but that's not an amendment. It'd be more like a foreshadowed resolution. So because Yeah, not into but the resolution is, the resolution as moved is specifically on the Barker Baramba scheme. That's a much broader resolution, so it's different in short term. So if you were to move that, so if that was to be presented as a foreshadow, or depending on where the mayor and the meeting wishes to go, the first one will be discussed and that would sit there as a second one. So if the first one gets voted up, the second one just lapses because it's been dealt with. If the first one gets voted down, well, then the foreshadowed resolution is debated. So does that make sense? Sorry to be technical, but she's just too different to the original.
Yeah, makes complete sense. Happy for that to be the process, but would like the chamber to understand my intention is to stay true to the motion that we've just moved. However, I'm very mindful of the resources in which council has, and that more work needs to be done in terms of allocating that funding across all of the projects included in the NWIDF study. I do not want to be in a position where we're cherry picking projects and determining amounts with no fact around what that might actually cost us to progress those. So very supportive of progressing this project, but I would like more information to come back to council in relation to the costs, so that we can make an informed decision about the outcomes, funding the outcomes that we desire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Are you comfortable with that being presented as a foreshadowed motion at this point in time? Thank you. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. With regards to the first motion, the councillor, which one are we talking about first?
So on the table, we have the motion as presented, Councillor Duff's motion.
Beautiful,
Thank
thank
you.
you. That's what I want to talk about. Okay, with regards to this particular motion, I would like to take out the 129,000 and put remaining balance, just in case something goes over or under. I think that might be me. I would be happier with that. Or do we need to actually put the amounts in? Because I know everything else has a monetary value behind it, but I would prefer if we took the monetary value out of this one, because it's already on the list. Be done.
Yes, so Councillor, in terms of our process, and Mr CEO, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that could come forward potentially as an amendment to the motion. Mr. CEO, it's not significantly different to the intent of the original motion as such. Are you proposing to put that forward as an amendment to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Potter. So, councillors, do we have a seconder for the amendment? Yes. Councillor Frodoff has seconded the proposal put forward as an amendment to the motion. And we'll just get that up on screen if we could. Thanks, Tracy. So we just take out the $129,000 figure.
Mr Mayor, just if the mover agrees to it, then it becomes the motion. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I agree.
It can be.
I agree to it.
Councillor Shoemaker, are you comfortable as a seconder? Let's get that on the screen though to make sure we're clear with what we're doing here.
I am, Mr Mayor. However, I'm concerned around the word remaining balance. At this point in time, it's not clear, as Manager Jed had said before, it's not really clear in terms of, it's been some time since we wrote to the state around the remaining funds from the NWIDF fund grant, and I think we need to actually revisit the scope, and actually when it comes to, I think there's more work to be done. I'm concerned about just open-ending a balance of funds. What is the balance? At this point in time, we know there are funds required internally and externally to deliver this work, but there has been some time since we've written to the state and we're not entirely sure of what they are. So at this point in time, I'd be more comfortable with a report coming back to council after we've determined who's actually going to do the work, who's going to progress it, and what will that look like. I'm really mindful that, you know, time is of the essence, absolutely. Getting the right expertise and understanding around the table is very important. And yeah, I don't want to be in a position where we've overexpended on some projects, not on others. I really want to make sure that we we set ourselves up for success with the right resources for the right aspects of what we're trying to deliver. So at this point in time, I'm probably not supportive of the amendment on those grounds that I don't understand what the remaining balance will be, because we haven't gone to market with our scope of works. I'd much rather wait until we do that.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. I don't normally interject until the end of the debate, but in this matter, there is the potential, just to make everyone aware, $450,000 has been allocated to the projects that have been shortlisted. They have specific allocations assigned to each project. I'm a little bit, I'm certainly hearing what Councillor Shoemaker is saying, that I don't know how much work or science has gone into determining the amount of money that we've actually allocated to each individual project. It may be that we've under-allocated on some. We may have over-allocated on others. It may be more prudent of us as a council in our due diligence to actually undertake, have the councillors, have the staff do some work in relation to all of the projects. We have them now passed through council that we've got, I think, is it 6 projects there in total, that all projects are revisited in terms of what it's going to cost to undertake the studies or whatever it is that's indicated there appropriately. Because we may need to move some of those numbers around to get that right. We may need to allocate some more money to get this important work done. The $129,000 may not be enough. It may be too much. The $75,000 for Bar-Lil may not be enough to get that through to completion. I think there's some prudency here would indicate to me that that may be, and that we perhaps need to go back and revisit the whole bucket of $579,000 and get some proper professional advice around how that should be appropriately allocated to get these projects through to where council wants to see them end up. That would be my view, and I would be happy to perhaps give some guidance to council on how we could change your motion, Councillor Duff, to reflect that. Perhaps, Councillor Duff, if we were to say that South Bennett Regional Council could we consider a report, or can I, Mr. CEO, we just want to get this run done and raise
Yeah, okay.
Mr. CEO.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I'm just here going to be a bit fussy. The original resolution and notice of motion that was duly circulated to councillors is as tabled, so council can only deal with one resolution at a time. Councillors, so I'll just run through in sequence, so how I think logically out loud. Councillors' amendment was too far from the original, well, anyway, my opinion was too far from the original resolution, so it's foreshadowed. You have now a duly moved and seconded amendment that really needs to be dealt with as well. So and you, unfortunately, you can't amend an amendment until the amendment's dealt with. So you can't have 2 amendments running at the same time. So unless that one's withdrawn by the mover and seconder with the leave of the meeting, that's where you're at, I'm sorry to say.
Mr. CEO, if Councillor Duff, so Councillor Duff and Councillor Shoemaker, if you're prepared to withdraw your motion. Sorry? We've got a mover and seconder for the amendment. Yep. Oh, yes, of course we do. I'm getting tied up in amendments here. Okay, so we have a mover and seconder for the amendment as such. Other speakers? Sorry, Councillor Jones. Well, Councillor Potter, would you be prepared to consider withdrawing your amendment, or would you like to proceed?
No, I'll withdraw the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So we'll now have that removed. Thank you, Councillor Potter. That brings us back to the original motion, Councillor Duff, to your original motion. Would you be prepared to consider withdrawing that motion and replacing it with something in keeping with the matters raised by Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We'll now note that Councillor Duff has withdrawn her motion. And seconder, Councillor Shoemaker. This is Tracy's first time doing this. You're doing terribly well, Tracy, I've got to say, under difficult circumstances.
All right, so now it's as clear as mud. So the first 2 are dealt with, so council doesn't have an active resolution on the books in front of it, so then you move to the foreshadowed resolution.
Okay.
Or a version thereof.
Councillor Schumacher, would you like to flesh that out a bit more for us? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Otto. I would like to move that council further define its scope of works for the NWIDF, for the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund. Phase 2. And a report detailing the costs be brought back to council. For consideration. For the cost to deliver, sorry, Tracy, back where it says, so that council further define its scope of works for the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund, Phase 2, and a report detailing the costs to deliver the projects identified. Be brought back to council for consideration. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for clarifying, Councillor Schumacher.
Mayor, I'd suggest, what are we, September ordinary meeting? Because certainly taking on the point that time is of an essence in this space. And September ordinary is a decision-making meeting, so it comes back no later than September ordinary.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, do we have a seconder for such? Okay, Councillor Duff has seconded. We will now go to Councillor Schumacher. Would you like to speak to your motion? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to restate how excited I am about progressing stage 2 of this study. It really is, it's sat on the shelf. I know we've all been frustrated. We got great momentum at the beginning, and unfortunately with COVID, it has stifled our progress forward. I think we all understand and recognise that this is a key strategic, it is the biggest piece of work that we will work on in this term of council. And I am just so excited about progressing this, about working with our community, and to really look at our future and get some tangible outcomes on the horizon. I think it's been, the water discussion in our region has been stifled. I think there are so many creative people in our region who have achieved amazing things with what they have. And I only can just imagine what could be if we could just add water. This really will be an integrated study. It really will involve looking at our entire region. And I know that there are opportunities across the entire South Burnett. And I look forward to working with the team and our broader community. And I can't wait to get to work. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Right, so we have Councillor Schumacher's motion. Councillor Schumacher has spoken to that well. Other speakers, Councillor Jones.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and this is probably where I was alluding to before with this is a sensible decision on behalf of council, I think, and we went the long way around getting to it, but we've got there. This is a clever decision in knowing exactly what the expenditure is going to be to deliver on all parts of this proposal. So we are committed to the feasibility study, and now we are showing very good governance in the fact that we want to make sure that we have the money, and if we need to find extra money, we can go down. Getting very close. It gives Jed a bit more time to get the nitty-gritty, write out all the expenditure that's required, and if we need to look into our first quarterly review to find any extra money to fund it going forward. And the other good thing is that this project and all the other feasibility studies that are in motion at the moment will not be ground to a halt because we run out of money or anything like that. So I think this is a very good, sensible decision on governance and everything else. We certainly endorse the feasibility study, and we're showing good governance now moving forward as far as financial side of things go. So fully support this and look forward to the outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I 100% agree. I was just put the notice of motion because I knew that the question would be asked where it was going to be funded from. So that's why I thought, well, that contingency amount, but I think it's much more practical and sensible to look at all of the projects now and allocate the funds accordingly to as necessary for the different assessments. Some will need more money, some will need less. So I'm very, very happy with this motion. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thanks, Councillor Duff. Other councillors wish to contribute before we wrap up? No other contributors at this stage. I'll just probably add just a few comments. Just like to support Councillor Shoemaker's motion. I think it's a sensible motion that shows good governance, as Councillor Jones has said. It's prudent that we go and do our homework on what each of these projects are going to cost. That's what we do in this council community, is we do our due diligence when we're managing your funds and government funds. So I would certainly commend this motion to the chamber as well as one of the councillors in the room. Okay, now Councillor Shoemaker, did you want to have a right of reply before we go to the vote? Okay, no. So we'll go to the vote. Motion as presented, in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr CEO, for your contribution as well. Always valuable having your wealth of technical expertise on meeting protocol and procedures. And thank you, Council. That's been an exceptional debate. I think we have shown extremely high quality level of governance, as Councillor Jones said, in dealing with this matter responsibly for our community. Thank you. It's now time to break for morning tea, so I'm going to move that we adjourn shortly. But before we do, I'd just like the members of the gallery, please don't rush out the door, because as we move out for morning tea, it would be nice just to perhaps, if you haven't met some of our councillors, take the opportunity to do so before you leave. We do have to head over to the supper room, I believe, for some citizenship awards. So in light of that, I'll now move that the meeting is adjourned. Second to Councillor Henshin, thank you. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. Meeting adjourned. Meeting at 2 p.m. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, item 8.1. Business outstanding at 35. And recommendation is that the business outstanding table for the ordinary council meeting be received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, second to Councillor Potter, thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions in relation to, or comments in relation to the table that's presented? No? Let's go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.1, Australia Day nomination forms and location at 51. The recommendation is as a result of the matter being discussed extensively at the Standing Committee meeting. And as a result of that, we have a recommendation that the South Bennett Regional Council 2021 Australia Day nomination forms be approved and the location of Australia Day Awards ceremony be held at Nanango on Sunday afternoon, the 23rd of January 2022. A mover. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Froloff. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.2, proposed Christmas closure and staff Christmas function at 56. And the recommendation as presented is there. So in summary, it is proposed that outside and operational staff would be on Christmas break from Monday the 20th of December through to Monday the 3rd of January inclusive. Indoor staff Friday the 24th of December through to Monday 3rd of January 2022 inclusive. That's the summary. The detail is as per the officer's recommendation. Do we have a mover that the motion be presented as stated? Thank you, Councillor Henson. Second, thank you, Councillor Froloff. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.4, adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council. Sorry, no, I've stepped. 9.3, sorry, confirming council's attendance at the LGAQ and LGLQ, annual conference 2021 at 59. The recommendation is that Councillor Kirsty Shoemaker attend the 125th LGA annual conference 2021. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Froloff. Speakers for or against? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, just quickly, this is the one in Mackay we're referring to there? Is the rest of the council going to that? Have they been asked?
We had a, sorry, Councillor Jones, yes, if I could just, just clarify. We did have discussion in relation to this previously. Councillor Potter, I think you and I are attending, Mayor and Deputy Mayor, as would always be the case. Councillor Potter, were you attending that one as well? And Councillor Henson are going. So, yeah, so the motion is to include Councillor Shoemaker. I don't think Councillor Duff went to Canberra. Did we have Councillor Duff and Councillor Froloff not going to Mackay for the state conference? Yeah. That's, happy with that. Any further questions? Councillor Shoemaker?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The only reason why I am particularly interested in going along is because I have put forward some solid motions in relation to energy policy, and I would like to be a part of those discussions when they hit the floor, so that's why I've nominated to go. And I've been working with Mayor Nev Farrier from Banana Shire Council. Councillor Jones and I met with him, and we've got some joint motions actually being presented at the LGAQ conference. So just very keen to be a part of that and fly the flag for our region from that perspective.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Let's go to the vote on this. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.4, adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Acceptable Request Guidelines, Policy Statutory 004. That's at page 60. And the recommendation is that the Council's Acceptable Guidelines Policy Statutory 004 be adopted as amended, with the term managers being added to clause 3.14. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, second to Councillor Duff. Thank you. Speakers for or against? Probably just one thing, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify. In the legislation, it says that section 170A 5 and 6, you know how I love my legislation. I don't profess to be as good as you, but I'm doing my best to keep up. 170A 5 and 6. 170A 5 says that a request of a councillor under subsection 1 or 2 is of no effect if the request does not comply with the acceptable request guidelines. So that's actually enshrined in legislation in the Act. And then section 6 goes on to say that subsection 5 does not apply to A, the mayor, or B, the chairperson of a committee of a local government if the request relates to the role of the chairperson. So I just wanted to make sure that 3.3 in our policy was just consistent with that, I suppose, Mr. CEO, if it's possible to, for council, a matter for council to give consideration as to whether we should just insert that into 3.3.
First point of principle, Act always overrides the policy. So if its policy is inconsistent with the Act takes precedence. So that's just not rule of thumb. That's just the rule. Oops, sorry. I don't have the legislation up in front of me, but I don't disbelieve you, Mayor, at all. So the role of the chair of a committee can request an employee. I was going to say the role of a chair of a committee or the mayor asks for a whole raft, like as you do through email, and you ask for a whole raft of information on, as mayors previously and no doubt into the future will do, a councillor request of a councillor. So I mean, like whether it's an email or not, if you're chasing information, we try and get it. It would just, I suppose, in the context of your question, but I don't see that being any issue. It's same as the portfolio council talking to their general managers. We pretty much run that now any which way, unless there's.
We do.
Happy to do examples if you've got some, or if there's an issue, happy to address it.
Yeah, I
But
think-
yeah, so as far as the policy goes, if it is inconsistent in any way, legislation always overrides policy.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Seow. I'm comfortable with that the legislation overrides it anyway. So in your mind, there's no need to change the policy. Or what you're saying. And we've been working in accordance with the legislation, you and I and the GMs to this point anyway. So
Very
I think
much.
it's working quite well.
Certainly flag it for future if it needs to go in somewhere to make it abundantly clear. But yeah, happy to just made a note and have a look at what we can do. Anyway, yeah, happy either way.
No, that's fine. Thanks for clarifying, Mr. CEO. Shall we go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Councillor Conduct Complaints Investigation Policy, Statutory 028, is the next item. It's at 67. Recommendation is, and of course this recommendation is as a result of discussion at a standing committee meeting, and is that the South Burnett Regional Council Councillor Conduct Complaints Investigation Policy, Statutory 028, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Froelich, thank you. Councillor Potter seconds. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Oh, Councillor Potter. Sorry, Mr. CEO. Adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Policy Governance Framework, Strategic 006, it says at 75. The recommendation, again, this has been to a committee, and as a result of that, the recommendation coming out of the committee is that the South Burnett Regional Council Policy Governance Framework, Strategic 006, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconder Councillor Duff. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.7 is adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Employee Code of Conduct, Statutory 011, at 79. Again, this matter has been to a standing committee where it was discussed and debated. As a result of that, the recommendation is that the Council's Employee Code of Conduct, Statutory 011, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Froelich. Speakers for or against? In favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Information Privacy Policy, Statutory 038, 93. Recommendation now of the Standing Committee meeting is that the South Burnett Regional Council Information Privacy Policy, Statutory 038, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker. Seconder, Councillor Henson. Thank you. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Information Management Record Keeping Policy 039. We're now at 98. And the recommendation, again, coming out of the Standing Committee meeting where the matter was considered, is that the South Burnett Regional Council Information Management Record Keeping Policy, Statutory 039, be adopted as presented. We have a mover, Councillor Henson, seconder, Councillor Potter. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.10, adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Community Engagement Policy, Statutory 050, and Community Engagement Strategy. We're up to page 105 with this one, and again, this has been through a Standing Committee meeting, and the recommendation is that the South Burnett Regional Council Community Engagement Policy, Statutory 050, and Strategy be adopted as presented. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to put an amendment to the policy.
Okay, Mr. CEO, we have a recommendation from the officer. Councillor, are you looking to put forward something as you were looking to amend before adoption, amend the policy before adoption?
Yes. Mr.
Okay, can that motion?
Yeah, Mayor, the recommendation, so if it's just policy as be adopted as amended and then slot him straight in under. So councillor's just moving off that with the amendment underneath. And then if it's carried, we'll just insert it into the draft. Easy peasy.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Please proceed in accordance with the CEO's advice, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. that the South Burnett Regional Council Community Engagement Policy Statutory 050 and strategy be adopted as amended through the inclusion of the following clause at step 3 of the strategy guide and tools. For capital works projects, the level of impact for capital works projects and level of engagement should be for capital works projects, rather than for capital works projects. As presented in the IAP2 spectrum is to be determined by a resolution of council as part of the capital budget adoption.
Well, just after you go back to the start and just read that again slowly and carefully. It's important we get this right, just so that Tracy can make sure she's captured that correctly. Thank you.
That the South Burnett Regional Council Community Engagement Policy, Statutory 050 and strategy be adopted as amended through the inclusion of the following clause at step 3 of the strategy guide and tools. For capital works projects, the level of impact and level of engagement as presented in the IAP2 spectrum is to be determined by a resolution of council as part of the capital budget adoption process.
If you could just confirm that's correct, Councillor Duff. You're
Yes, I'm happy with that.
okay.
Thank
So
you.
we've got the motion moved. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Councillor Duff, please speak to your motion. Thank you.
So I have spoken to General Manager Jarvis, and I've also spoken to the CEO, because I believe that there is a gap in where we have the adoption of the capital budget, whether that's Works for Queensland or whatever budget it is, in the capital section, between when we adopt it and then the staff go out and do the operational side. And there's all of this communication strategy, but my concern is who decides the level of impact. So what I'm suggesting here, and it's been confirmed through General Manager Jarvis that there is a breakdown. So I think it's a missing link. Community consultation, I think, is a matter of strategic importance, particularly on capital projects that will be in place for many years. And I believe the consultation strategy is best determined by the council, as it is our role to know our communities and ensure that they are satisfied with the consultation process. So I'd like the councillors and the general managers to be all on the same page as far as what we think is the engagement strategy and the level of impact. So we might say when we're adopting something that the level of impact is low. So then we're all on the same page. But if the councillor is concerned about something, they fly a red flag at that point and say, well, even though this may be a small project, I think the community are going to be really concerned about this one. So can we put it at a medium? And then all of those triggers then come into place. So I'm really, it's one I've been concerned about for a very, very long time. I've seen it break down. We have these wonderful projects, and between when we put forward the project and when it gets delivered, I've seen some turn horribly wrong because there's been a breakdown in community engagement. So that's just my thoughts on this, and I'm really keen to see that inserted into this policy. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Just to clarify for those of us other councillors, what you're asking us to debate on here is that, so I understand it, is that when the capital budget is adopted at the start of the year, as part of the budget adoption process, that there is, when the capital budget's presented with the projects and the cost for each project, that with that there is a recommendation from the officers as to the level of impact and therefore the level of engagement in accordance with our guide, our policy guide, that should be applied in relation to each of those projects. So it's once a year when the budget's adopted. So we're not talking about here bringing policies back, projects back to council, which, as Mr. CEO pointed out, the Standing Committee, would just be completely impractical. It wouldn't work. It would clog up the system too much. But you're just saying to bring it forward once at the start of the year with the capital budget. I just want to clarify that for the councillors, because to make sure that we're all clear as to what you're proposing.
That's right. It would be at the time of adoption of the capital project. There would be a recommendation beside it, and this the general manager would put that recommendation, and then we would say, well, we're good with that, or no, we think it needs to be higher or lower if we've got a concern. Mostly I'd say they'll probably all just go through, but it's an opportunity at that point to say, I think this one needs some consultation, or so it's only once, and it's at that time.
Thank you, councillor. Okay, we'll go to councillors. Questions in relation to what councillor's proposing? Speakers for or against? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I understand what the councillor's saying, but I'm comfortable with the way the policy has been presented without the amendment. Me personally, I've had no issues in my short term as a councillor in regards to discussions that I've had with any part of the budget in regards to talking to officers, in regards to the effects on community and all that. If we think as an individual councillor that this, particularly if it's in your area, you should know exactly what the impact, or have a fair idea, not exactly know, but you should have a fair idea of what it's going to do to the community, what the reaction is going to be. And I think you've got the opportunity well and truly around those discussions on community, the effect on the community around capital projects or any part of operational or anything like that around the budget. So me personally, I'm happy with what was presented initially, and I won't be supporting the amendments just on those grounds. I'm comfortable with the way the process has worked in the past.
Thank you, councillor Jones. Other councillors wish to speak? Keen to hear other views. Councillor Schumacher.
Probably just a question. I know we talked about this at length at the committee meeting. Still, my view, this will form a big part of the project management framework that we adopt, particularly for large capital works projects. I'd expect there would be a communication piece with that. I'm just trying to understand from a logistics point of view how this would work. So when we adopt the capital works project list, which makes up the budget documentation, are we sort of proposing to have a secondary document to that? Or because by stating by resolution of council, I just want to be clear, and probably asking for CEO Mark's feedback here, if it's by resolution of council, capital works projects in that capital budget process, how I'm very mindful we're sort of tethering on operational grounds here, and I guess I just want to understand what would this actually look like in practice if we adopted this today, CEO Mark, please.
Yeah, thanks, councillor. The bit, certainly, actually probably 2 points. I would correct the councillor in that she said she spoke with me. just before lunch is not, my input in this is extremely limited. For the record, the resolution of council, so whether, and that was, I was ticking over in my head, if council adopts it, how would we do it? Do we have a green red traffic light just down the list of the documents? I don't disagree with the intent, as says in the standing committee. I don't, to do it for all of them, the practicalities of it would be, I'm still, yeah, working, I'm probably rambling a little bit, Mayor, sorry, but I'm trying to work out how you would do it. So the simplest way would be, in my head, would be to, if you were going to adopt this, you would have a traffic light next to each project, green, red, yellow, whatever it may be. And then if someone disputed it, you wouldn't do, I'm just trying to think of the volume of capital works we have. You wouldn't do an individual resolution, and I don't think that's what you're talking about. You wouldn't have an individual resolution for every project, otherwise you would just drown yourself in paper. So yeah, if it's something as simple as when the budgets are, when the projects are put up, be it through a workshop or whatever process that council uses going forward, the committee process, it has a traffic light next to it, that could make it, that would be working. But it certainly wouldn't be, in my mind, a resolution against each project. There will be individual projects that come back through council. I mean, the IAP process, IAP2 process is easy. We already have the consultation section in the council reports. Easy to drop in a report if it's an individual project. It's extremely easy to drop into a report at that process, which is where this document was going, as far as a tool is to be utilised as far as future reporting. But yeah, that would be, if the question is how would you practically make it work, it would be list of capital, list of financing, consultation, traffic light, green, red, yellow, and then someone would have to say, oh, I don't agree with that, and you could have that individual discussion. I think that's how it would be best to make it work, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Schumacher, are you comfortable with that response?
Yes,
Answers
thank
the
you.
question.
In terms of the actual amendment, I am supportive of giving this a go and seeing what we can learn through the process. I'm mindful that our project management framework, we're still working in that space. I do think this document and the engagement strategy that's been put forward is excellent. I think it really does align with the work in which we as a council do across the many projects that we deliver. And I guess, yeah, we just have to be mindful of what resources are required, what is the need, and what are we trying to achieve. I understand the intent. I'm mindful of the complexities and sometimes how community moves. And I think with that, there has to be, in some cases, some level of flexibility in recognising that we are working as a team. And sometimes, whilst we may aim, I know Councillor Potter and I have been very busy this week trying to inform and consult and involve our community in the plans for the Kingaroy Transformation Project. And I think our community is almost feeling a little over-consulted in the process. You know, so I do think there's a balance there. So I think we have to be mindful we could set the tone as a council through this process if that's the intention. But I do think there has to be a level of flexibility for some projects that maybe have less of an impact than others, which I think is your intent. So yeah, I'm supportive of the amendment as giving it a go and seeing how things pan out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher, and thank you, Mr. CEO, for clarifying how that would work. Councillor Duff, in terms of what our CEO's explained as to how it would work, is that in keeping with you as to how is the intent of what you're saying?
Absolutely. I just wanted it to be a very simple process, but just an opportunity for councillors to flag that this needs consultation, just so that everyone's on the same page.
But for the staff to come forward with a report with the budget that has the traffic light system with the colour coding against each project to try and simplify it as much as possible. Yeah, you're comfortable with that? Okay, thank you. Other councillors? Councillor Potter.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just want to know that if we have done, once we've done this once, and if it doesn't work out or we find it too cumbersome, whether we can actually go back into this policy and change that strategy?
Councillor Potter. Mr. CEO, is this a policy that we review annually, or could do?
Any policy can be reviewed annually. Normally they're a 2-year cycle without having a look at the, Tracy, do you want to just flick up to the back end of the policy? It'll have the review date on it. I would have thought it would be 2 years, but yeah, if we can, if you wanted to put it down for a 12-month review, we could easily amend that to 2022. That's easy. So really we can bring these back at any point.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Duff, would you be comfortable if we were to, as part of this resolution, change that so that it says August 2022? That way we get to trial it for 1 year, see how it works next budget cycle, and if we want to then change it or do something different, we can.
Absolutely. I'm keen to be flexible with it. I just wanted to try and get something a bit better than what we're doing. Yep.
So yeah, would we just to add that in the resolution that we change the next review date to August 2022? Yeah, Councillor Duff, would you be comfortable then just to add that to the resolution? Tracy's just typing that in now.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
So we'll then add that further, the review date be amended to August 2022. Councillor Duff, please address the meeting, not individual conversation in council. Thank you. Okay. Rightio. So where are we at? Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Schumacher, before we wrap
I
up.
just had a question, Mr. Mayor, for Councillor Duff, just in the spirit of learning. I probably want to understand what you mean by your term a breakdown in communication and community engagement. I'm just trying to understand. You'd mentioned that before, a breakdown, and I'm just in the spirit of learning and making sure that what we're applying is right. I want to understand what you mean by that.
Mr. Mayor,
I think what we'll do is might just take that question, Councillor Schumacher, and in your right of reply, if you can address that question from Councillor. Thank you. Yeah, as part of the debate. Thank you. Other councillors, before we look to wrap up and go to right of reply. Okay, Councillor Jones.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just briefly, I just want to re-endorse what I said. I understand where Councillor Duff's coming from, but me personally, I think and Councillor Duff was just whispering to me about an issue that she was able to stop, but I honestly believe that we're adjusting things for me on something that's not breaking. I just a bit lost for words. I will be voting against the amendment simply because I think that the policy that's been the original policy here, I'm fine with the work, and me personally, I believe that we have the opportunity as a councillor, if we think that there is some community backlash or something that could come from a project, I think we'd be well aware of it, and I do think that if it was mentioned in a council meeting at any stage in budgetary discussions, I think that would be addressed as we currently are. So I just think we're changing something unnecessarily. So that's just my views.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Freloff.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry. Councillor Duff, are you stating that all our capital works and that we've got to go out to community engagement, or just certain ones?
I just clarify, thank you, Councillor. I can just interject there. I think what the Councillor's intention is here, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor, is that each of the capital projects has a level of impact and a level of engagement attached to it as flagged by a traffic signal colouring system or whatever it may be. And that in fact there may be some projects at which the impact level is low, is particularly low, that you'll say that the level of engagement is nothing more than what is shown here under low as inform the community as to what we're intending to do. I just want to clarify, am I on the right track in answering Councillor Freloff's question? Yeah? Yeah. Sorry, continue.
Sorry,
Continue, Councillor.
Yeah, like to go out to community engagement, as Councillor Jones saying, can put more bees in the hive than we really want. I believe that we are pushing into operational issues, and are we making it harder for our staff to get things done? Are we going to be put back so much because we've got to go out and get community engagement? Or this is where what I'm wondering is, are we making more work? I know the staff have, like, they work for council, we all work for council, but where do we draw the line of going out all the time to community engagement? That's what I was wondering.
Thank you, councillor. Let's continue. Other councillors? Okay, councillor Henshin. Yep, you're right. Sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, in listening to that, it's and I can understand Councillor Froeloff and Councillor Jones, and certainly Councillor Duff. I think we have in place there a pretty good chart, and as you alluded to, Mr. Mayor, you know, we inform, we consult, collaborate, and surely under those guidelines we can do what we've been elected to do and make decisions on certainly capital work projects, taking in mind under that guideline exactly that, the level of impact and engagement that needs to be presented on certain projects. So, you know, I think I'd like to see pursue this for the next 12 months, and then perhaps in August 22 we go back and look at it then and see whether there needs to be changes done. But I think it's being implemented in the best interests of council and the community as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Anyone else want to add? Councillor Potter, anything else before we wrap up? No, you're fine. Thank you. Look, I've listened to some really good points made around the table, on both sides on this. So I've just gone, as you're talking, I've just gone back and had a look at the actual first page of our policy, at page 106. And in the point 1 there, it says that South Burnett Regional Council is committed to effective and appropriate community engagement, recognising that it is essential in making good decisions through listening and responding to community needs. Council also recognises its obligations under the Local Government Act 2009. This policy is not intended to replace decision-making responsibility, but enable council to improve its decision-making process for corporate planning services and major projects. So I do think that the organisation is trying to support us in making sure that we are engaging with the community by presenting us with this policy that we can work within. I'm reticent to see something that's going to be cumbersome for our staff and make more work that is unnecessary. But on the other, and I'm hearing that, but on the other side, I'm also, for me, as one councillor, I'm keen to make sure that we are within proper reason, not flogging our community with too much consultation, but that we are setting an appropriate level of consultation. I do feel that in council, you know, we all have roles to play in the community. We know our communities quite well. I think each of you know your communities quite well, and that you bring a lot to the table in terms of knowing the community and being able to consult with them in each of your divisions, as well as your portfolios for that matter. And without rambling on too much, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I do feel that this seems to be something that could be quite workable, as CEO Mark explained, with that traffic light system. I do, like Councillor Shoemaker, think maybe it's worth giving it a trial for 12 months and see how it goes. And then if we find it's just not working or not functional, we can revisit then. But I think it's possibly a good initiative to at least trial it and see if it's worthwhile and see if it's going to actually give us a more robust and more effective community consultation process, and actually might save us from having issues when the staff are out on the job doing the project, where they actually then have to sort of get involved with community discussions about things that they may or may not like. Maybe if we do that up front, we might be able to save ourselves some time. So, look, I don't see that there's any harm in trying it for 12 months. That's my view. I guess I'll rest my comments there. Councillor Duff, over to you for right of reply before we vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, Councillor Henson actually supported what I'm saying, because the policy is fantastic. It's got all of the different levels of impact and how we manage that engagement. But the breakdown is councillors are not having any input into that decision. It's the staff. So we go, here's a capital project, and then the staff then go through and work out what level of engagement. Sometimes the councillors who have put those projects forward have a different view to what the staff have and I know in Parks and Gardens they're always tearing their hair out because they go out and think we're just going to replace a set of swings when the community actually wants some other type of swing as opposed to normally they would just be going through a process. This is what we do. There's a budget here to do this. Whereas the councillor could have said at that point, they're really concerned about this. They want this particular type of equipment. And so at some point, the councillor, I think, needs to be able to declare if there is an issue. And I know that Councillor Shoemaker, for example, when we do Apex Park and all of those swings, actually wants to have timber ones. And I know that she's had feedback from the community that they want timber ones. So if we just go, okay, here's some money for to do up the swings at Apex Park, that's at this point, then if we have the green, red and yellow, Councillor Shoemaker goes, this one I think we need some consultation around it because the community don't just want a plastic set of swings. We're not just actually replacing that set of swings, we actually want wooden ones. I had a really bad example of quite some years ago when, and this continues, where we had a large amount of money in the budget to do a car park in Mergen, and I knew what the community wanted. The staff went forward and built the car park, and no one uses it because it wasn't, the councillor didn't get a chance to have to provide that feedback.
Councillor, I might just interject here, just in terms of time. Councillor Shoemaker's question in relation to saying the breakdown. Yeah, sorry, you're comfortable that that's been addressed, Councillor Shoemaker?
I thought I had addressed that.
You have addressed that? Okay.
Yes, thank you,
Good.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Just want to make sure we had addressed that question appropriately. Okay, what of reply has been finished. Let's go to the vote. Those in favour. You got that, Tracy? Councillor Duff, Potter, Shoemaker and Otto. Thank you. Those against? Councillor Jones, Henshin and Froloff. Carried 4-3. Thank you, councillors. Okay, we are now on to item 9.11 at 124, which is the monthly financial report. And the recommendation is that the report, including capital works and works for Queensland at 31 July 2021, be received and noted. Do we have a mover? Thanks, Councillor Potter. Seconded by Councillor Froloff. Speakers for or against, or any questions, Councillor? Just to bring to everyone's attention, of course, it's the 31st of July, so we're only 1 month into the financial year. There's some pretty big ratio discrepancies, I know as General Manager will point out, but they're because we haven't collected our rates money yet. So if our cash ratios look a bit out of whack, they'll come into line once the rates revenue comes in, as is explained in the report. General Manager, did you want to take the opportunity, or Mr. CEO, to clarify anything in the report at this stage before we go to the vote? You comfortable?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, like you alluded to, Mr. Mayor, we're only 1 month into the budget here at the moment, and we haven't had any funding come in, and we've only just levied rates. The only thing I think of interest to I'd like to highlight to council there is the outstanding rates and arrears as of the 31st of July. We had $4.813 million outstanding in overdue rates. Now that's 8.31%. Our target is 7%, but I just thought that's as we've just levied rates again, and we are negotiating about the sale of rates and arrears. I just thought I'd bring that figure to council's attention. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
General Manager, you're comfortable that you've got strategies in place to drive that down to a level that you're comfortable with, to the target over the coming months?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we have just employed a rating, well, I'll use the term expert there, to come in, and we're doing a full review on every part of our rating processes, and that, as well as we're actively engaged in pursuing all of those overdue rates, and hopefully we'll see a big difference within the next couple of months. We are actively pursuing those overdue rates, yes.
Thank you, General Manager, and for those members of the community who might be tuning in or watching. While Council does, on your behalf, actively pursue people who haven't paid their rates on time or have overdue rates in arrears, we also do have a policy, a financial hardship policy, that provides what I think is quite fair and appropriate opportunities for members of the community to enter into an agreement with council to pay off your rates if you can demonstrate that you're suffering financial hardship. So I know we've approved a number of those where we have community members suffering financial hardship, and council's always been very open-minded and fair, I believe, in considering those. So we try and work with the community, but we also try to make sure that we're managing your money very diligently and carefully. So thank you to General Manager, to you and your staff that do so much wonderful work in this debtors space particularly. Thank you. Okay, anyone else wanted to add to that? If not, we might go to the vote. In favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Queensland Audit Office 2021 Interim Management Report for South Burnett Regional Council. So that's at page 168. And this matter has been considered in the Executive Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting. And as a result of that, the recommendation coming forward is that, subject to section 213 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council receives the 2021 Interim Management Report from the Auditor General, detailing the observation report of South Burnett Regional Council's financial statements as presented for consideration. Do we have a mover? Councillor Frolov, seconded Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you. Speakers, questions? General Manager, comments? How did we go on our interim report? Are we travelling okay from an audit point of view for the benefit of council and the community?
Thank you, Mr.
We going
Mayor.
well?
Look, Mr. Mayor, I believe this is an exceptional report. I really do. Extremely proud of the finance team. The auditors, the QAO has audited our financial statements, and to date, they've identified no new identified significant deficiencies. There is one carried over from last year that we have addressed, and that one was that there was no controls over our grant funding through Tech One, but through our review of Tech One and the appointment of a grants officer, we've addressed that there as well. So there's no new. Nothing identified by the QAO, which is, like I said, again, it's an outstanding report, I believe. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, General Manager, and your team in continuing the good work in keeping council compliant with the Queensland Audit Office and keeping our community's money in safe hands, with the work that you're doing with the Risk and Audit Advisory Committee, the work that your staff are doing, and Mr. CEO, right across the organisation. Thank you very much for all the work you've done.
Thanks, Mayor, and totally support the General Manager's comments. We see some of the media and some of the different things, and it's not to say that things can't go wrong, but what we're doing is restricting the opportunity for things to go wrong in this space as far as fraud or anything else, and it is an excellent interim report. Looking forward to the final statements for this year.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. And of course, we work very hard in this council to make sure that we're always doing the right thing and dealing with the community's money and assets in a way which is responsible and open and transparent, and where we mitigate risks to anything that could impact on council and therefore the community. And this report, no doubt, confirms, being done independently by the Queensland Audit Office, that council overall is doing very well in protecting the community's assets. So thank you again. Any other speakers before we go to the vote? If not, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.1 is the Haley Street Wandai Roundabout Community Consultation. That one's at page 177, and this has been to a standing committee meeting where it was discussed extensively, and the recommendation from the committee is that council note the design material and commence broad public consultation on the Haley Street Roundabout with the Wandai community with a third design of all concrete. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, second to Councillor Henshin. Speakers for or against? Well, Councillor Duff, sorry. would you like to speak first as the mover? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'm happy with this recommendation that we go forward with the concrete as another option, and just that we have the broad community consultation. I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Mr CEO.
Mayor, there's been a couple of inquiries about the third design. The design team's working on it. I'll yield to Acting General Manager if his advice is any different to mine, but the third design should be finished in early September. So it'll be circulated as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Mr CEO, and please pass on our thanks to the design team for the work that they've done and taking up that third element to the design concepts that are being presented to the community. Councillor Hensham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, notification this morning with some conversation I had with some people working on this project that it will be circulated to all our councillors in a very near future as to dates in relation to that community consultation. So I hope to get that out to everybody to peruse in the next day or two. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Other councillors? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 11.1, application for funding under the Black Summer Bushfire Recovery Grants Program, 188. This has been to a standing committee where the recommendation coming forward is that council develop and submit an application under the Black Summer Bushfire Recovery Grants Program to undertake a social recovery and resilience program and an economic recovery and resilience program. Do we have a mover? Councillor Froelich, thank you. Second, Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers for or against? Councillor Potter.
Look, I just want to say that this has been an amazing piece of work done by the staff and Jim especially in this area and what he's trying to do for us as a council. So this will just, you know, if we're successful with this grant, you know, it holds no boundaries. It's fantastic. So this is going to be wonderful for us as council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Potter. Other councillors? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I too just wanted to acknowledge GM Peter, Leanne and Jim and Kim, who have, you know, done an exceptional job pulling together quite a comprehensive funding application in a very short period of time, and have really focused on all of the things we as a council have discussed, certainly in this term of council. Really thought about what we're putting in for funding and what really would make a difference from a economic and community perspective, and how we could really genuinely build resilience in our community, resilience and capacity. I am so excited about this application. I really do hope that we are successful. I think you would see our council kick some serious goals if we had some resources in this space. It's pretty amazing when you go through the project plan to think just how many things we have achieved without them. But my goodness, the sky's the limit. Should we get this funding, the things that we could do, and the way in which we could really drive our community forward gives me goosebumps. So just an enormous heartfelt thank you to the team, Peter. I know you've all had pressing priorities in other places, but made space and room to get this done, and really do appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Well said. And yeah, sure, all councillors feel the same. General Manager MA, thank you for finding space and time in your and putting resources into accessing this funding. It's much appreciated. Yeah. Any other councillors wish to speak on the matter? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 11.2, social housing funding application at 189. Councillor, this is, as we know, has been through a committee meeting where there was a recommendation come forward. We've now got the officer's recommendation that includes a recommendation as such, as well as an alternative recommendation. Do we have Councillor Duff, you've got your light on. Would you like to proceed?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the alternate recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. So the alternate recommendation is that the council collaborate with not-for-profit groups that manage emergency, transitional and long-term social housing, as well as a range of complementary support programs to investigate options for a grant submission in round 2 of the Resource Communities Infrastructure Fund or other similarly grant programs. Clarifying, that's what you're moving, Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, yes.
Okay, thank you. Just to be clear, do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Councillors wishing to speak, Councillor Duff, we'll let you speak first, and then we'll go to Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you,
you.
Mr Mayor. After the Standing Committee, I spoke to CTC. They are not in a position to progress an application to meet the deadline for round one. So this gives greater options for regional housing service providers and also more time, as I know that Deputy Mayor Jones was keen on that, and I think that he was right, that we do need more time. And we've got that other good application going forward, so happy to put this alternate recommendation up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Fully support the alternate recommendation. I do feel it is the best approach to tackling this problem. It is a giant problem for our region, and one that no one solution will fix. Very similar to water, I think we need an integrated solution, and we need to put all of our options on the table and really think through a process that will help fix this problem, not create more problems in our community. So fully supportive of the alternate recommendation, fully aware of the need for more housing in our region, and certainly I know every one of my colleagues are. We all have conversations across our various areas, and we know the lack of rental properties is really having an impact across many facets of our community. So really keen to progress this, to take our time and to really think about what kind of application we could put forward, how we could collaborate, and certainly how we could get the desired outcome. I just read through the report, and I see that the CEO did make contact with CTC on the 16th of August, and with your permission, Mr Mayor, I was just through you, would like to hear from our CEO just in relation to that conversation and his thoughts about how we progress this recommendation going forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr CEO.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor. It's in summary, it's pretty much that paragraph. The intent, and everyone's on the same page, is that this is an issue. Community groups actually sat through a community meeting the other day of a range of, with my Rotary hat on, it made you proud to be a person in the community, because there's a soup kitchen about to be established without stealing other people's thunder. And nearly every organisation in Kingaroy has come together for that, which was terrific. Councillor Potter was there as well. There's providers. We've identified a third-party provider. Resources to put in the application was basically, the long story short, was the resourcing to get the application in the period of time wouldn't have done it justice. And the feeling was that if we put a bad application in, it may actually do us damage down the track. So hence the alternative. We've identified an accredited housing partner between CTC and ourselves that we would like to engage. Haven't mentioned them here because we have yet to contact them, depending on where this recommendation went or resolution went today. But certainly we'd be organising I'd be looking to organise a meeting with an accredited housing provider as well as Council, CTC, and then we can branch out into other people. And I think given a period of time, we'd be able to put together a very good application.
Well articulated. Thank you, Mr CEO. You're comfortable with that, Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Very excited.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. And could I just say thank you to all the councillors. I think we've all been, I feel from our conversations that everyone in this chamber is fully committed to finding solutions to the critical housing issue we have, particularly for people who are living in far less than desirable circumstances, and indeed including those who are in fact homeless. And Councillor Potter's worked in this space for some time with the Local Level Alliance, continue to do so. Councillor Duff, thank you for coming and supporting Councillor Potter and the work that you're now doing and bringing this forward. But as I know, I think we're all equally concerned on this issue, and I know that we'll all pull together and work on it, and we're going to get an outcome in time. But I certainly agree with what Councillor Shoemaker has said, that it's important that we get it right and don't create any more problems for our community, and this will give us time to do so. So, yeah, thank you, Mr CEO, too, for bringing forward the alternative recommendation to Council to consider. Much appreciated. Did anyone else want to speak, or did you want right of reply, Councillor Duff, before we wrap up? No? Councillor Jones, you're starting to get a bit fatigued, but you're right. Yep. Happy with that?
Mr Mayor, that was exactly what I said last week, and wasn't acceptable, and I'm quite happy for Councillor Duff to admit that I was right. Thank you.
And I must admit I didn't miss that, Councillor. Can we have that recorded in the minutes? It's good to see our two senior councillors working well together, and Councillor Duff acknowledging Councillor. I agree completely, Councillor Jones. Okay, so without further ado, let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, 11.3, I think we're up to 11.3. It's at 191. It's the Kingaroy Community Garden. And again, this has been put forward by Councillor Potter at a committee meeting, which resulted in a recommendation that South Burnett Regional Council calls for expressions of interest in the Kingaroy Community Garden from community groups and local residents, and report back on the status of the site to a future community standing committee. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Henson. Councillor Potter, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Since this, I've actually spoken to some more residents throughout the South Burnett that actually use these gardens, and I've spoken to a couple more homeless gentlemen that actually help these ladies work in the garden, because that's one of their sources of food as well. So, look, I do believe that our community gardens have suddenly taken on a life of their own within our community, and I do believe that they are a very valuable resource.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Other speakers? No? Okay, probably just like to add again, thank you, Councillor Potter, for bringing this forward on behalf of the community. It's a wonderful initiative, and we'll look forward to the report coming back should this be adopted. Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 13.1 is adoption of the local disaster management plan and sub-plans. It's at page 193, and again, this went to a standing committee meeting where it was discussed by the committee, and a recommendation has come forward that Council note and adopt the South Burnett Local Disaster Management Plan and sub-plans endorsed at the South Burnett Local Disaster Management Group meeting on 17 June 2021. It is noted that all councillors will receive a hard copy of the plans upon adoption at the General Council meeting, and these will also be uploaded on Council's website. Do we have a mover? Councillor Fryloff, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Potter. Speakers for or against? Councillor Fryloff, did you want to? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank the team, Donna, Tash, Powan, and even Peter and everyone that's been involved. This is a great plan, and it's something that we're looking forward to, and please read it. It is fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fryloff. Any other speakers? No, probably if I could speak on behalf of Council and say thank you, Councillor Fryloff, to you, the work you've done in leading as chair. I'm very pleased that you're relieved the mayor of those duties. Thank you very much for the work you've done as chair in the LDMG. It's been a challenging time, and it's good to see that the new plans are now going to move us forward. And to Councillor Potter as your deputy chair as well, and to the staff, Donna over here, and General Manager O'May, and all the work that you've done, and Donna and GM me and as the coordinator. Thanks very much to everybody. It's been a challenging 12 months, but you've come through it with flying colours. The community's very fortunate. Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 13.2 is the Wide Bay Regional Organisation of Councils Urban Water Technical Committee dissolution and formation of Wide Bay Burnett Urban Water Alliance. That's at 194. I think I got the page wrong last time. So we're now at 194. Again, this went to the committee, and the standing committees recommended that council continue with the collaboration across the Wide Bay Burnett water businesses under the Wide Bay Burnett Urban Water Alliance, under the terms of reference provided. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconded Councillor Jones. Councillor Shoemaker, did you wish to speak, or other speakers? Thank you.
I commend this to the chamber. I absolutely think the more we can learn from partnering with each other and collaborating with others, sharing thoughts and ideas, and I recognise how successful this group has been in the past, and look forward to learning more about the work they do into the future. Certainly, I think water is a key issue for a number of our surrounding regions, and I think the opportunity to keep talking with each other and sharing what we know is really important. So, no, I fully support this recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Other councillors? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Councillor, of course, we've dealt with item 13.3 earlier in the meeting, and we'll now move on to 13.4, application to supply water outside the declared water area, page 197, where the committee has recommended that council approves in accordance with the Water Supply Act, Safety and Reliability Act 2008, to extend the declared water supply area on the Proston Rural Water Scheme to include Lot 10 on RPB09 in the parish of McEwen. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, thank you. A seconder? Councillor Potter, thank you. Councillor Duff?
This one we've already went through a standing committee. Mr. and Mrs. Evans are already utilising the water, so this will not take any more water from the scheme. They only require the water for household and garden use and for a small herd of cattle owned by their grandson in times when the dam is dry. This will allow council to put a meter in place and collect the annual access charge from the customer. And Acting General Manager Brennan has said that this could be done with this property on the edge of the boundary, and manager team has advised that costs will be charged back to the customer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Potter?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I know we discussed this the other day, but the one thing I do really want to make sure that it's because none of that is written here, that the costings for putting the new meter in will actually be charged back to the customer, because I do not want anything to fall back on council with this one. And the other thing I'm concerned about right now too is whether we are setting a precedent for letting a water supply outside of the declared area. That's the only other thing I'm concerned about. So will this open the door, through you, Mr. Mayor, probably through to Jed or CEO Mark, will this open the door to future applications? Because I don't want it to open the door to future applications for people outside declared areas.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. I think just to clarify too for the community that what council is seeking to do here is, in accordance with the Act, is to extend the declared water supply area to pick up one additional property which is on the boundary. So we're actually considering the extension of the declared area map as such. But Mr. CEO, General Manager, response to Councillor's question. Mr. CEO, thank you.
As far as the costs, I would need to take that on, but it would be my understanding that if there's any cost involved with this, we wouldn't be, there'd be a connection fee. I'm just looking at Jed, but yeah, I may have to take that, but I would have thought we would charge it back. That would be once this goes through. As far as precedents, council, when it resolved the other day, there was reasons why it was listed as an exception to the officer's recommendation. The general position would be any further expansion to the water areas would come back as part of would certainly be included as part of the annual review, but unless there was a significant change somewhere or mitigating circumstances, our recommendation would be not to expand any more water areas, full stop. Now, again, that would be council's decision in the long run, but that will be the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Sow. I did recall Manager Tim indicating, I think we asked this question in the meeting at the Standing Committee, that his costs would be billed back to the customer. We probably have to look back, but I'm pretty sure that's what Tim had said, that he would send the customer a bill for his costs in installing the equipment. Yeah. You comfortable with the response? Questions answered, Councillor Potter? Yep. Good. Okay. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to go on record. I voted against this in the Standing Committee to come to the General, and I will be voting against it today. Simply, I know all the circumstances. I know the pulling at the heartstrings with the young child and helping his grandson out and all that sort of stuff. I've tried to convince myself to change my mind, and I can't, on the simple fact that if circumstances hadn't have changed in the family of these people and the brother that had the block of land across the road, and he continued to own that block of land, would this council have been notified that that was even a connection there? Understanding that everybody in this chamber has agreed that it has been illegally done for over 40 years. and it's outside the region. And I just, on principle alone, I can't bring myself to support this because I understand that he's saying that he's only going to use a certain small amount of water or whatever, but in dry times, and we give him the allocation and the approval for this, there's nothing to stop him from filling up his dam or anything like that. There was another applicant come in on the same day with this particular application, and we knocked that back. Yes, it was further up the road. We had to lay pipes. I can't bring myself to the words historical connection. Council could recognise it as that. I can't bring myself to that because it hasn't been a connection that's been legal. So I can't wear the historical connection type thing. So as much as I'd love to, understanding the situation that the family's in, I've asked myself, you know, what solutions do we offer other people in the same situation that haven't got that water pipe there in drought times, in dry times and all that? Do we go and offer them something here when they're not, I just can't get past the 40 years unidentified. I believe these people have had options and chances in the past to make it legal. And it's just the fact that if circumstances hadn't changed, would this council have been made aware of that connection, or would it have continued the way it was? So on that, I just wanted to justify my stance on this. I'm not heartless. I'm not standing up here or anything like that, but this is just on principle and what I believe is right. And I've tried for weeks to try and convince myself to change my mind, but I can't, so I'll be voting against this for those reasons.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Froloff.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor, can I ask Acting GM Brennan, how many people have we had come in and ask for a connection for outside that area offhand? And we've said no to them, we've declined their application. What is stating that they could come back now? Like if we've given someone water, come back and say, well, you've given this gentleman water, we should deserve it too. So where do we stand in that? Can you please answer?
Through the Mayor, Councillor Froloff, I believe this is subject to a question which we will respond to in the Infrastructure Standing Committee. And because of the proximity of the general meeting, the Infrastructure Committee have the answer, so I am able to provide that. There were 29 applications for connection for water supply to our scheme which fell outside the declared water area and for which, of course, officers are unable to permit connection. That's since January last year, so it's the 18-month period. To answer the second part of your question, Council sets, under the Water Supply and Security legislation, the boundaries of its declared service area. We have no options in relationship to any response for connection outside that area. For connections inside the area, of course, we're bound to make connection.
Thank you, General Manager. You're comfortable with the answer? Thank you. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, it's a seriously difficult one, and I guess it's historical, so it goes back a long, long time, and why it was done and how it was done is beyond my comprehension. And obviously there was excuses and reasons then, because when you follow the boundary and look at the map, it's certainly weird, but then I guess development has happened over time because of that. I guess, and we listened to facts and figures of what that system could develop in the costings in replacement of that in time to come, which is very scary, and we all are very aware of our water situation in the entire South Burnett. And that being said, I go back to Hivesville and what Hivesville might want in future years, and we've all seen what's suggested and been thrown around there with different options, and I would hate to think that anything, and of course fear of opening the floodgates, and I know it says here in a case-by-case basis, and we've had 29, thank you, applications in the last period of time. This is a difficult one to support in the fact that it's historical, and I'm very mindful of what possibly could happen or would like to happen in Heisel with water in time. So yeah, I will struggle to support this at the moment because of many other factors that have certainly over the period of time probably been gone by the wayside and not noticed. So yeah, I'm genuinely concerned about our water and the Heisel and future development of water in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly agree with both sides. This is a very difficult decision to be made, and I know we've met with the proponents and they've put their story forward. And certainly the reality is, the facts are, it was an illegal connection, and they have not been contributing to the network. However, I do also recognise that, as my fellow colleagues have pointed out, that this has been allowed to continue for a long-standing number of years in many councils go by, and the narrative around how it even came about is questionable. It's a very difficult decision. However, I stand by my decision in the standing committee meeting. I do understand there are many people in our region who may be in similar circumstances, and I feel if that's the case, then we do have to assess each and every one of those on merit and on their grounds. Certainly don't think this is an open book, and by no means would I be thinking this way about all 29 of those applications that come forward. I recognise that when you buy a property or a piece of land, you accept the services that come with that property and that piece of land, and you know, you must do your own due diligence. So if you've purchased something or are looking to connect to water when it wasn't historically there, there would have to be significant reasons. And if there were, if you're going to create jobs or industry, it would be something I'd be willing to consider. But that's why I do think these are on a case-by-case basis. I am going to support this application purely on the fact that it has been allowed to happen for such a long period of time, and that I can see to not allow this application to go ahead, that it would cause significant stress for the people who own this property. So on those bases, and on the basis that they have been using the water for this period and they are going to cover the costs, and up until this point in time, it was my understanding council, they had been through a process and council had identified that we could connect them previously. So there's been a lot of things that have changed throughout the years where we offered, and I know they didn't take it up. That was another, sorry, please retract that. I understand that was another situation. So I've gotten my applications confused, my apologies. I just think on the basis of the fact that this was allowed to happen, it's a reminder that the decisions we make here actually stand long beyond this council. They go into the next one and the next one, and this is one of those decisions that one of those previous councils somehow came about, and it needs a resolution. So I'm going to support it today on those grounds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Other councillors? Oh, Councillor Jones, hang on. Sorry, you've had one chance to speak. Other councillors first wants to speak? No? Quick one, Councillor Jones. Secondly?
Just a quick question on that. In regards to a comment that Councillor Shoemaker just made, that council was aware of this connection. Can I just verify that we were aware of that up until the family were aware that the brother may be selling that property? Can someone tell me that they were aware for the last 10 years or something, or was it brought to the attention when the gentleman thought that he may lose his connection because his brother was selling the block?
The gentleman, if I could just answer.
I was going to say, my answer is very simple. I would not know off the top of our heads. Yeah.
The residents concerned here presented a document that had been furnished to the bank, which identified the water connection. I don't know if that document came from council, but it certainly identified it was a legal document that the bank recognised where the water connection was acknowledged as part of the loan application or the transfer of the title of the property. So that showed that there was some acknowledgement. I don't know that they actually come through a council search though. It's quite an old document. That was the only evidence that I saw that council may have been aware, going back many years to the Wandai Shire Council days, that connection existed. Unless general managers have any further information, Peter, any evidence of that?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, not aware of any.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My apologies. It's by no means do I mean to mislead the chamber. By that statement, I meant that in the time I've been in council, we've been aware of this issue. So my apologies, Councillor Jones. Just for the record, I think, yes, I've heard the story from all sides, and that's my view on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying, Councillor Shoemaker. So that's fine. Okay, so look, I've heard everyone go around the table, and we discussed this at length at the committee meeting where it was recommended that we do grant this. I've probably got nothing more to say other than to say I agree completely with Councillor Shoemaker's observations that as a council our role is to take these things case by case. The 29 cases weren't all at Proston. I think they're right across the region though, Jed, aren't they? So they could be in other water schemes. So you might not be comparing apples with apples in that case. Look, I probably can only say that the arguments that Councillor Shoemaker's articulated, I think, prevail in my mind, and as such I would support the continuation of this as a one-off in this particular case at this stage. Yeah, that's my view. The mover was Councillor Duff. Did you want to write a reply?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's already been covered off. I think Councillor Shoemaker's covered it off nicely. It's about what was historically happened, the fact that they're right against the scheme. They've already been getting the water. I'm concerned about their stress levels as well, and that I think we need to handle all these on a case-by-case basis, and just really keen to have this one supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, we'll go to the vote on this then. Those in favour? Okay, Councillor Duff, Potter, Shoemaker and Otto. Those against? Councillors Jones, Henshin and Froloff. You got that, Tracy? Very good, thank you. So that's been carried 4 votes to 3. Thank you, Council. Move on to 14.1, magpie swooping. We're up to page 198. And first of all, thank you to the staff for investigating this issue for us and coming forward with a recommendation. So the recommendations that the staff have put forward are twofold. Option 1, that the report be received and noted, or option 2, that pursuant to section 235C of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council enter into a contract with a licensed and available relocator to remove up to 20 magpies from the region, with total cost not to exceed $10,900, and 2, that the required funds for the contract be sourced from the Rural Services Business Unit. Is there a councillor would like to move one of those options? Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move option 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. As presented, option 2. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you. Councillor Duff.
I think this is a fantastic recommendation. It will support our rail trail, make our region safe, help ensure we don't have a tragic situation as occurred to a mother and child in Brisbane. The budget is covered through the rural services, the same as we did in removing the vegetation at the Blackbutt Flying Fox colony. So just really keen to support this. I just think it's a great opportunity to make a difference, and this problem's been going on for a very long time, so it's great that we have an option to address it. Thank you.
Councillors, thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm fully supportive of this proposal. I think it's something that we should try. It's my understanding it could be successful in some areas and it may not be as successful in other areas. It will depend on the magpie, and from what I've been able to find online, sometimes these projects work and sometimes they don't. I have identified that the areas in which have been considered in the report here are highly trafficked areas by walkers and pedestrians. And I can see, I know firsthand, my daughter walks home every day after catching the school bus and is absolutely terrified by the magpie in the street. So I can see how this does have an impact on people of all ages. And, I know we've all got stories like that. And I guess it's worth a shot. I would like to see, though, and I'll probably put forward in the recommendation that a report come back to council in terms of an evaluation as to how the project actually went, what we learned, and if it actually was effective. I understand it's a lot of money to try something, but I also understand, and my heartfelt sympathies to the families in Brisbane who are no doubt devastated after that recent incident in a park. And I think, for a small investment, it's a good opportunity to see whether this could actually help fix the problem across the region. So on those grounds, I am supportive of having a go. But Councillor Duff, just in the recommendation, I'd like to put forward a suggestion that some sort of revaluation, a report, an evaluation of the project, of the magpie relocation project, come back for council's consideration so that we can properly budget for this in future years if it is something that is effective in our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Duff, are you happy to have that inserted perhaps as an item 3?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Well done, Tracy. You've already got that up on the screen. You're a step ahead. Well done. Thank you, Tracy. So we've just got an addition to the motion that further a report come back to council, providing an evaluation of the magpie relocation project for council consideration. You happy with that, Councillor Shoemaker? Would you like to change that anyway? Thank you. Councillor Duff, you're in agreement? Okay, so we've got that motion there now. Further speakers? Councillor Jones.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I understand fully what's going on. I have trouble with remove up to 20 magpies. We have the areas identified. How do we prioritise the worst 20 magpies? I've got a magpie in Maidenwell too. High trafficked areas. It only takes one incident to make it a tragedy. We've seen it in Brisbane, and it was an unusual thing to happen. And again, with Councillor Shoemaker, my sympathies to the family. I would hate to lose one thing in my life. I hope I never have to bury my own child. I hope I never have to do that. Call me selfish, call me whatever you want, but that's something. But seriously, it's only $10,900, and you've got up to 20 magpies across the region. Who's the one choosing the worst magpie in our region? I get it. I get what the council's trying to do. I understand all that, but I just don't know. That's just my thoughts. The big issues, I guess, and this is their 10,900 up to 20 magpies. This is the flip of the coin, whether I go with it or against it. I struggle with this. I really, really do. I guess I've got no more to say, but just trying to identify the 20 worst magpies, the areas that are here are highly trafficked. Again, if you've got 5 people walking down a track on a creek all the time and there's a bad magpie there, it's the same chance of a real serious incident happening with 5 people as 500. So I don't know. It's just too open-ended. I don't know.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just like to make a comment on that. So the team will generally, we will need to make an assessment or judgment call, and generally we're looking at sites that you're going to expect vulnerable people. That say around a kindergarten, there's a child that may run out in front of the car, or around elderly people who probably are less likely to protect themselves, or if there is not alternative routes. So as Councillor Shoemaker said, if a daughter can take a different route home and avoid the magpie. So there is no magic bullet or no thing, but those are the sort of things that we would take into account. We've provided a list of identified sites since this came out. People are probably contacting council and saying, oh, we've got one here. So I'd also say this may not be the final list. I suppose we wanted to make put an upper limit, that we don't just have an open checkbook that every magpie we go and replace, because it needs to be done as a program. So yeah, haven't got the answer, but we would look at really the highly trafficked area, whether the people who are impacted are vulnerable and can't, I suppose, or less likely to protect themselves. So so I would say this may not be the 20 magpies. If it is that as well, because if we do find something that is another issue, it's ultimately going to have to be a judgment call that the team are going to have to make. I wouldn't think we'd be bringing that back to council and looking for resolution. But we wanted to make it clear that we would do the program once, and then if there's a bad one that comes up after that, we'll just have to go back to the stand. We would still be signage and then advising people, which has been the standard practice for the last time. And so, yeah, that's hopefully that answers somewhat, Councillor James.
Thanks very much, General Manager O'May. Yeah, thanks, Peter. Councillor Hensham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was talked about on the 11th of August. Obviously, the magpies were a problem probably several weeks prior to that. It is known statistically that magpie swooping season lasts around 6 to 8 weeks. It's also noted that you're going to relocate these magpies. Have you thought for a minute that you're relocating them and creating a problem somewhere else? Because that's what you're going to do. You relocate these magpies and you're going to put them on someone else's doorstep. And I don't mean that to be you're going to take them to Blackbutt or Yarraman. You might take them up into the Bunya Mountains, or you might drop them in the forestry. That then allows for the next dominant magpie to become a problem in that area. I can certainly understand, and we've all lived with magpies all our life. It is a seasonal thing, and I would put probably my morning cup of tea on the fact that by the 11th of September, magpie swoopings would have almost disappeared. As much as there's been some tragedies, and there has been across our entire lifetime, with people with damage to their eyes, and certainly the tragedy in Brisbane was an absolute freak accident, and our hearts bleed for those people, and everybody else's would. But I just can't support relocating 20 magpies when you're solving a problem and putting it somewhere else. So I'm sorry, I'm not supportive of this.
Thank you, Councillor Hensham. Other councillors? Anyone else want to speak before we go? No further comments, additions? Councillor Duff, this was yours. We'll go to you for a reply shortly. Yeah, thanks everyone for your contribution. And Mr. CEO, thank you to your staff for coming forward with this option. General Manager O'May, I'm certainly understanding what Councillor Jones is saying. I would probably fall back to resting on the judgment of our staff. I think we've got a very good NRM and Parks and Gardens team. They've been with us for quite a while, and I think our Parks and Gardens NRM team know where the most problematic magpies probably are already, because they've been dealing with complaints now for the last few years. I'm told it tends to be the same magpie that tends to come back to the same spot each year. So I'd certainly have confidence that General Manager O'May and his staff can make that judgment call operationally. Happy to leave that with them. And then I think just in terms of Councillor Hensham, that indicating that they'll not be swooping after the 11th of September. That's certainly not what I've been hearing in the community. I know last year I had parents telling me that up near St John's, it might have been, they had magpies swooping in term 4 after the September holidays in October, still swooping. And I know on the rail trail down here, I had people, my sister complained that one of the kids got pecked in the eye. And I know that was certainly after the September school, or during the September school holidays, late September. So I'm not sure whether their patterns have changed, but they seem to be swooping for longer. I'm just conveying what I've heard in the community from residents using the rail trail and around the schools. So that would also be a concern to me if we've got these magpies still swooping over the school holidays and into term 4. So, look, all things considered, I don't think there's a problem, in my mind at least, giving this a trial for 12 months. I'm agreeing with Councillor Shoemaker. It should come back for a full review. So let's hear from the staff as to how they think it worked and what they suggest for the future. I don't think it hurts to trial it for 1 year and see how it goes. That's probably what I've got to offer. Councillor Duff, right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I followed this right through because we've been. I had a customer in Mergen had her son. The helmet had been just about pecked right through, and there was 2 ladies that had facial injuries. And so then I followed through and rang the number that we had on our media release, which took me through to the Queensland Health Department. And so then I said, well, where do I go? And they said that the department actually licenses people to deal with birds of this nature. And so they said they're private contractors, but they are licensed. So they're not just going to be people that are just going to pick up a magpie and put it back in the same spot, or that's going to be somewhere else. They would be dealing with this in a professional manner, because that's why they're state government licensed to do it. So the other one is that the season is until the end of October. But the thing that I am really, really concerned about is the fact that this has been brought to our attention, the fact that we know that there is a possible solution. And if we turn a blind eye, just imagine if something now happens and we didn't give it a red hot go. So there's people contacting us, they're saying this is an issue. Mums worried about their kids biking along the rail trail or back to school or in a park. If we don't give this a red hot go now, given the fact that we absolutely know that there is some options, particularly as we've been told that the magpies, the same magpies for 15 to 20 years. So we're going to leave a magpie in our community for 15 to 20 years doing the same thing. So I just urge you to at the very least, to give this a trial, but just because it is an opportunity to do something different and perhaps a lot better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Let's go to the vote on this. Those in favour? Councillor Duff, Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Otto. Those against? Councillor Jones, Potter, Henshin and Froloff. Got that, Tracy? Okay. The motion has been defeated. 4 votes, lost 3 votes to 4. So that has been dealt with. Now, Council, I might recommend that we break for afternoon tea break for 10 minutes and resume at 3:45. So I'll now move that we adjourn at 3:36 p.m, return at 3:45 p.m. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Councillor Potter, thank you. In favour? All in favour? Thank you all. We'll resume at 3:45 p.m. Quick cuppa and we'll come back into the meeting. Thank you all. Okay, welcome back everybody. Now I'll move to reopen the meeting at 3:57 p.m. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Next item on the agenda is the naming of... Sorry, yes, Councillor Shoemaker.
Mr Mayor, just a procedural motion. I'm just noting we've got members of the gallery in relation to motion 14.5. I'm just wondering if we could bring that forward.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Potter. Thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. We'll now move on to 14.5, notice of motion, CCTV cameras and security lighting. That's at 207. And the officer's recommendation here is that capital funding be considered for the first quarter review to provide CCTV cameras in strategic locations subject to privacy legislation on the Kingaroy Rail Trail from the Youngman Street entry point to the intersection with Myers Road, and security lighting as appropriate. Do we have a mover for such? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Second, Councillor Potter. Speakers for or against? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Hello, Mr Mayor. It's been a long day, hasn't it? Hello, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am fully supportive of this motion. I recognise that there is a bit of work to be done in terms of identifying those locations for the CCTV cameras and security lighting, but in light of recent events and certainly activities that are happening in this area, I think it is more important than ever that we start moving on this now. I understand that residents in that area were actually guaranteed at the time that the rail trail was constructed that there would be something done around the security of their properties, whether that was lighting or some CCTV cameras. There were discussions way back when this proposal was first brought forward with residents in the area who raised concerns. I recognise that capital funding is tight and that we would have to look at perhaps Works for Queensland funding or other funding solutions, but I do think the reality is this is a problem. It's a big problem that's causing a lot of stress and in our community, and we need to do something about it. So my view on this is that we put this to the staff to come back to us with a report around what our options are for security lighting and CCTV cameras, so we can make an informed decision and certainly invest in infrastructure that's going to support improving the community's safety in that area. The rail trail is one of our highest used pieces of infrastructure here in Kingaroy. Certainly, I think we need to ensure that it's safe. So I am fully supportive of progressing with this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and commend it to the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Fully support, and I just got a proposal to put to Councillor Shoemaker that would she be happy if the motion read that funding be considered rather than specifically targeting capital? And you've just mentioned Works for Queensland and the like, so would you be happy to leave the word capital funding out and put something so it's more broader? Is that a possibility, Mr. CEO, or something like that? Rather than just target capital, if we can source funding from, if there's nothing in capital, can we get it from another source? Other than that,
Yeah, the only proviso on that is it certainly take the point is depending on the cost of the solution. I mean, there would maybe some operational works that you could do, but depending on the cost of solution, it would become capitalised. So if it's a Works for Queensland or a grant, it would be capitalised. So it's probably semantics whether it's capital funding or just funding, because it will come out of the appropriate bucket once it's approved. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Thank you, Councillor Jones. And General Manager Jarvis, as the CEO indicated, any new assets that we put there in terms of cameras and lighting, that will be capitalised. That won't affect our income statement. It won't be operational costs as such. Just confirming that.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we capitalise anything over $5,000. So, no, it won't affect our income
So
statement.
it won't affect our
No.
bottom line, profit or
No.
loss, deficit, any of that?
No,
Okay,
it won't.
thank you. Okay, further councillors? Others comment? Councillor Henson, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is, and I'm pretty sure every member in Chambers has had some fairly disturbing conversations and emails in the last couple of days. And I think this, as Councillor Shoemaker, I think we can progress this as soon as possible. People's lives and properties at risk with this, so it's a pretty important thing.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Other speakers? No? Go back, Councillor. Yeah, look, I really can't say any more than Councillor Shoemaker's articulated. I think that says it all for me. Councillor Shoemaker, did you want to finish off with a right of reply, or are we happy to go to the vote? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you to the community members who came forward and brought this to our attention as well. Okay, we now move back to 14.2, which is naming of the park at Proston, and that's at page 204. And the officer's recommendation is that the park at the intersection of the Oakenden and Wandi Proston roads be named Rundle Park in honour of Dr. Reeve Palmerston Rundle, the well-known and highly respected medical practitioner who worked in Proston and region in the 1930s. And prior to erection, residents be provided with a signed concept consisting of reused timber and silky oak if available. Mover, Councillor Duff, thank you. Seconder, we have a seconder. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Councillors, Councillor Duff, would you like to speak to your motion? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's self-explanatory that that park has not got a name. They want it to be called, the Proston community wants it to be called Rundle Park. We had a meeting with them recently with a lot of the Proston community members on the back of some of the silky oak trees being cut down at that park, and that was when they raised it with us. And yeah, as far as I'm aware, there's broad community support. So yeah, keen to see this happen.
Thank you, Councillor. Other councillors? Happy with that? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, voting point 3 is the Topinga Cemetery expansion, page 205. And the officer's recommendation coming from the Standing Committee meeting is that the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, Kingaroy, be advised that Council intends to expand the Topinga Cemetery in the near future, and that current cropping on the existing section of the cemetery reserve should cease as soon as possible. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Henson. Speakers for or against? Councillor Potter, anything to add? No? Okay, well, Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
We were just at DPI yesterday, and they had mentioned they're trying to relocate a power line easement as well. Just want to ensure, my only question is just checking that the cemetery reserve is owned by council, and obviously that the department has been using it for cropping. So I understand, yeah, the report was quite short, but just want to confirm that is council-owned land. We're just asking them to stop cropping that land so that we can progress our cemetery, or are we actually moving to buy land off the department here?
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Mr. CEO, my understanding is from what I gathered at the Standing Committee meeting is that it was indicated that we own or control the land. We own the land and we've been allowing them to use it for cropping. Just can we clarify that for Councillor Shoemaker?
If it's a reserve, it'll be a reserve in our name. So that's the best. So if it's a reserve for cemetery purposes, it'll be our reserve, if that is simple enough. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I do recall that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Any other speakers? No? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Public amenities cleaning contracts 206. Recommendation is that pursuant to section 228 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, South Burnett Regional Council seek tenders for cleaning of public amenities for the localities of Kingaroy, Nanango, Mergen, Blackbutt, Banarkin and Wandai. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Duff. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 14.6, Highsville Rail siding land. We're up to page 208. And coming out of the Standing Committee meeting discussion, there's been a recommendation that Council, based on the proposal from the Highsville Progress Association for development of Lot 112 on SP 116355, 1, liaise with the Department of Transport and Main Roads to determine appropriate development of the rail siding at Highsville. 2, meet the Highsville Progress Association to discuss project concept, appropriate size and location of proposed and alternative uses, estimated costs on developing the grounds and infrastructure so the community is fully aware of future funding required, and options for subleasing of the land. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconder. Seconder, Councillor Potter, thank you. Speakers for or against? Councillor Duff, first opportunity to speak, and then we'll go to Councillor Potter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's self-explanatory. There's the Highsville Progress Association have put forward a proposal, and that's off the back of that the officers have put forward this recommendation. I'm very, very happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, Mr Mayor. Look, I've actually, I voted for this when it first came to the Standing Committee, but since then I've been informed that the Highsville Progress Association hasn't actually had a meeting since February. So I'm actually a little bit concerned about this, that the whole of the Highsville Progress Association doesn't know about this particular proposal. So for that reason, I'm going to have to vote against it. Thank you.
Yeah, so Mr. CEO, Councillor Duff, where are we at, do you know, with discussions with the association? Has there been conversations in recent times? Are they aware of this proposal? to your knowledge?
Yeah, they sent this proposal through quite some time ago. So I think it's been, they sent it through, then they asked what was happening with it, and I think Manager Leanne's been negotiating with them and brought this forward. So I didn't know about the fact that they haven't had a meeting.
Councillor Potter has raised a valid concern. I think council needs to be clarification. General Manager, Mr. CEO, are we able to get clarification from the staff while we're debating, considering this matter? Is our properties manager available to clarify such in General Manager's absence? If not, we'll proceed. Just while if you don't mind, thank you, General Manager. We'll keep going. General Manager will just see if our properties manager is available, so we can have that clarified. Yeah. Might not be there. Yeah. We could possibly do that. Yeah. Councillor Henson, sorry. Thank
you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I have some serious concerns with this as well. I've actually had people come to me that are on the supposed Highsville Progress Association and absolutely knew nothing about this and haven't been to a meeting. So I show some genuine concern over this. So I think there needs to be some serious community consultation before this is progressed any further. And there's certainly some concern around this.
Thank you. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, I'm hearing the comments in the chamber, and certainly I would like to think that the Progress Association was meeting with each other and keeping each other informed. I'm just really mindful the officer's recommendation is to meet with the association to discuss project costs, appropriate size and location, estimated costs on developing the grounds and infrastructure, so that the community is fully aware of future funding required and options for subleasing the land. So I'm fully supportive of furthering these discussions. I'm mindful that we're asking to liaise with the Department of Transport and determine the appropriate development of the space. And then, of course, regardless of whatever comes back from the Department of Transport, I imagine we'd be wanting to meet with the stakeholders in Highsville and the Highsville Progress Association anyhow to discuss it. So I guess I'm supportive of this resolution as it stands. We're not necessarily committing to anything. We're just committing to more discussions, which clearly from the feedback my colleagues has given is what's required at this point in time. There's nothing concrete in this. I look forward to seeing project concepts. I think, is this the park they refer to as Mother of Millions Park?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Yeah. So clearly, Highsville's a beautiful little town. That pub is such a unique kind of character about it, and I would love to see nothing more than community groups partner with council to deliver projects like this, and I look forward to what comes back from it myself.
Thank you, Councillor. Other councillors? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you. Totally understand what Councillor Shoemaker's saying, Councillor Duff, but caught a little bit off guard in regards to the comments from or approaches from Councillor Potter and Councillor Henson. Before I endorse this and going and talking to the community group, I would certainly like to have the confirmation that the community group have had a meeting and they're all agreeable to have that and do that before we do take those steps. And so we are endorsing something here to progress further, not knowing whether or not that community group is fully on board and fully supportive of what they're putting forward. So I'd like maybe move a procedural motion to leave this one on the table until we have full confirmation on whether this has been discussed as far as the Highsville Progress Association, and I'd just like confirmation that this group is fully aware, all the members, and they're fully supportive, and then certainly by all means progress, because if we progress down, endorse this and progress down here without them having the knowledge, or members not having knowledge on what comments are made here, I'm a little bit hesitant to say yes to that. So I'd maybe be looking for a procedural motion just to leave it on the table and for further confirmation to come back from our staff to say that it has been acknowledged or something like that. I don't know, just an option.
Yes, Councillor Jones, thank you. So Councillor Jones has put forward a procedural motion that the matter lay on the table. Do we have a seconder for such? Yeah, Councillor Potter, thank you. We'll go to the vote on that. Those in favour? Councillor Jones, Councillor Potter, Henson and Froloff. Got that, Tracy? And those against? Councillor Duff, Shoemaker and Otto. So the procedural motion, yeah, no, you're right, Tracy. Councillor Duff, Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Otto, and 4 was Councillor Jones, Councillor Froloff, Councillor Potter and Councillor Henson. Thank you, Tracy. And so that motion to lay the matter on the table has been carried. Mr. CEO, we may be able to revisit that at a standing committee meeting. Could we do that?
We'll seek the confirmation and come back to council with a report. Yeah, so, yeah, if that suits Mr. Mayor. Yep.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Thank you, Council. We'll move on now to the next item, 14.7, which is the proposed agreement between Kingaroy and District Vintage Machinery Club and Council for Land at Kingaroy Aerodrome, page 210. And again, the matter was dealt with at a standing committee meeting where it was recommended that agreements be entered into with the Kingaroy and Vintage Machinery Club Incorporated at the Kingaroy Aerodrome for areas C and G for the purposes of farming for a term of 12 months for $75 plus GST, and part of F for the purpose of event parking for a term of 12 months for $75 plus GST. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Councillor Potter has seconded. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you to the staff for the work undertaken in progressing that as well. 14.8, tender for real estate services, page 211, where the matter was again considered at a standing committee, and the recommendation is that council endorse releasing a request for tender for real estate sales services in each of the towns in the South Burnett. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconder Councillor Jones. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 15.1, Resources Community Infrastructure Fund Round 1, QC and Dark Fibre to Nanango and Kingaroy. That's at page 212. And this has been worked through extensively at the standing committee meeting. And as a result, the recommendation coming forward to council is as presented on screen on page 212. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. A seconder, thank you, Councillor Potter. Speakers for or against? Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank and acknowledge the team, certainly GM Meehan, Cody and CEO Mark. The team have brought together what I think is an exceptional application, and I really do hope this would be just simply the icing on the cake if we were to be successful with this application. So just want to acknowledge the work that's gone in, the big picture thinking that's happened behind the scenes. Really am excited and hope to see that the South Burnett has success with this application. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Other speakers? Okay, so we'll look to wrap up. Just wanted to again, I suppose all I can say is let's keep our fingers crossed that we get a good outcome. A lot of work's gone into it, and it's a tremendously exciting project for our region. Yeah, I'd certainly support Councillor Shoemaker in commending this to the chamber as well, supporting the motion. Okay, so we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 15.2, a business forum at page 214. And so council, again, this was discussed at a standing committee meeting where the recommendation is that a partnership between South Burnett Regional Council's Regional Development Portfolio and CCIQ to host a business forum on Tuesday, 21 September 2021, with key representatives from each South Burnett-based business group and Chamber of Commerce in Nanango, so to be held in Nanango. To clarify, do we have a move for such? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Second, Councillor Froloff. Speakers for or against? Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can just confirm I've had some conversations with Tim Sawyer on behalf of CCIQ, and they are going to co-fund or provide the funding for the limited amount of catering and whatever else we may need for this event. So I just think it's a fabulous partnership, a great opportunity to learn from each other and to really lean in and think about the issues that small business and medium-sized businesses in our region are facing, and certainly that will help inform the regional development work plan as we go forward. So I'm really excited about this opportunity for all of our councillors to come along and certainly listen firsthand to what our business community has to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Other speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, and look forward to what no doubt will be a really exciting initiative for our region. Okay, 15.3, local procurement targets. That's at page 215. And again, this has been to a standing committee meeting where it was discussed extensively in response to Councillor Shoemaker's proposal. And as such, the recommendation is that South Burnett Regional Council adopt an aspirational target to increase its local procurement to 50% of its annual spend by 2023. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconder Councillor Potter. Thank you. Speakers for or against? Happy to proceed, Councillor Shoemaker. Straight to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 15.4, mobile black spot program, 216. And again, from the standing committee meeting discussion, the recommendation is that the following areas be investigated for future submission to the mobile black spot program: Boondooma Dam, Mount Mobullin at the Bunya Mountains, Moffordale at the Burnett Highway, Redgate, Malar Road, Kingaroy, and Crawford, Memorambi and Warrulan. Do we have a move for such? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Henson. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 16.1 was addressed earlier in the meeting, so we'll now progress to 16.2, notice of motion, pressure cleaning of CBD footpaths. We're to page 218, and Councillor Duff, over to you to present your motion, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since putting forward this notice of motion, I've had further discussions with Acting Manager Watt and General Manager O'May, and I would like to move an alternative motion. And I've handed in, and Tracy should have the wording up, but it is that a report be brought back to the September Standing Committee meeting with service levels and costings to implement a regional CBD footpath cleaning program, including an option for a trial for a 6-month period involving the hire of a litter vac and a pavement scrubber with tandem trailer.
Thank you, Councillor. So we have that move. Do we have a seconder for such? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Councillor Duff, do you wish to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The team in Parks and Gardens are thinking of purchasing 3 heavy-duty trailers and gurneys, and before doing so, I think it would be good to consider our options on service levels and costs. In the long term, we are hoping to purchase these machines to make the cleaning easier and more efficient for our staff. Wouldn't it be more practical to trial the machines we are considering purchasing rather than spending the money on 3 trailers and gurneys? So that's the rationale behind the recommendation or the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Other speakers? Yeah, Councillor Henson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question, probably more than any, and I guess it states there tenders for monthly pressure cleaning of CBD footpaths. Am I correct in saying that the Mergen footpath was not to use pressure cleaners?
We've changed it.
I understand that, but I'm just, in the original motion, like it's pressure cleaners and pavement scrubber. Does that comply with what was said in relation to the Mergen footpath?
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of cleaning options given, that was all.
That was what they came up and trialled, Mr. Mayor. That was the machine they came and trialled.
And for the benefit of council, what was the outcome of that trial?
They loved it. Everyone loved it. The staff, everyone thought it was great. And that was the one I tried to get into the capital program and backed by the staff. But then we decided not to because we wanted to wait till we got more of the footpaths across the region done. But I'm just thinking, rather than spending the money on these trailers and gurneys, that we could, if we have a look at the costing, it might be just as cost effective to actually hire the potential ones that we want to purchase, just to see if we're happy with them.
Thanks for answering the question. You're comfortable with the answer? Question answered. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Henson and Councillor Duff. Councillor Shoemaker? Yep, sorry, Ross. Councillor Frolov.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Was it Monday, Donna? Monday we went for a walk? Yeah, Monday. I had the pleasure of walking around Nanango businesses and dropping in the brochure of how to look after and maintain footpaths and that, because we've got to abide by the state legislation of environmental. So we were the first cabs off the rank, Talia and I. We did all the businesses around Nanango. There was most of it was all good feedback. Some have asked when we are going to start doing it. We'd like to do an annual clean. That's what we have stated. But there's certain things that they can't use on the footpaths, and just explaining it to people that, yes, they are footpaths for the town, but to take care of them, that you've got to look after them, and you can't put stuff down the gutters that's going into the waterways. But I think overall it was good. Good feedback that we got. So I just wanted to let you know that Nanango's done. Have fun, guys.
Well done. Thank you, Councillor Frolov. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, certainly I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Frolov for being so proactive. That's fantastic. Well done. I'm fully supportive of this motion. Certainly I know the staff have done a lot of work in this space in understanding our current service levels and understanding the costs if we were to change what we currently do. And I also think the trial work that was done with the equipment was perfect. I'm a big believer in equipping our staff with the tools they need to do the job that they need to do in the most efficient way, and certainly delivers value for the people of our region. I'm mindful that we are spending 60 figures here in Kingaroy and certainly across the region on footpath infrastructure, and that livability and lifestyle and the way in which our CBDs look is a key priority for so many residents. So I'd love to see more information of this come back. I know we're in the midst of budget discussions when the last proposal come forward, and at that point in time, of course, everyone had their red pens out, and it did not make sense at that point in time to be investing in this infrastructure in this kind of equipment until we had a clear path forward. I'm mindful, colour will be coming on the Kingaroy pavement soon. The Blackbutt project will begin before Christmas, the end of Christmas, and that we need to take our time and make the right informed decisions with this one. So I'm really I look forward to starting this work sooner rather than later, so that we can bed something down into the future, and certainly have those discussions about cost overall. I think this is much better approach rather than buying gurneys and trailers that certainly we may not use into the future. I think let's look at everything before we rush in and buy anything new, and then let's reconsider whether that is the best option or whether this is the best option. So no, I'm fully supportive of this. Thank you, Councillor Duff, for being so proactive.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Other speakers? Mr. CEO, just Councillor Shoemaker's point there about buying gurneys and trailers, can we put, I'm very much in agreement, can we put that on hold if there's plans to do so until Council's had a chance to understand the service levels and see the content of this report?
Oh, I don't think we'd progress anything until this comes back, if this is Council's resolution, yeah.
Good, thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, well, Councillor Duff, final words before we go to the vote?
I think I've...
Yep, thank you. Let's go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. Next notice of motion is at 16.3, public ramp at Pajulke-Peterson Dam. We're up to page 219, and Councillor Duff, this one's yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been working with General Manager O'May, and we've put a dot point number 2 for the, and I think Tracy's got that one. So the first, so the, sorry, yep. So number one was to act to have options and engineering plans prepared for a 45-metre extension to the public boat ramp at Bjelke Peterson Dam. And upon completion, council make application to the Department of Transport and Main Roads for approval to undertake the extension works. And two, that council make application under the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries Queensland's Fishing Infrastructure Grants Program for funding to extend the public boat ramp at Bjelke Peterson Dam.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Do we have a seconder? Yep, Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Okay, Councillor Duff, would you like to speak to your motion? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we did this, we had money in the works for Queensland and we had to just do a repair job because there was not enough time to do, we didn't realise, Parks and Gardens didn't realise that they needed to get approval from the Department of Transport and Main Roads and to do the engineering plans. So that's now being progressed and there's an opportunity now that General Manager O'May has identified to actually apply for some funding. So that's why that .2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I've also seen correspondence that Mr CEO has sent through to the fish stocking group, making them aware previously that it can't proceed without Transport and Main Roads approval, and that requires proper engineering plans to be prepared. So that's certainly been communicated by council to the fishing group. Just for information to council. Councillor Jones, did you want to add anything? Thank you.
Yeah, have no issues with the proposal. I've just got a couple of queries for Councillor Duff through you, Mr. Mayor, that reading on that first motion, Trace, if you can just act to have options, engineering plans, council make application to Department of Transport for approval to undertake the extension works. So in regards to that, and I see you've got option 2 there. Now, if you're unsuccessful with funding through the grant application, are you expecting council to find funds to complete that with the wording that you've got? Could you just clarify that for me, so that if you miss out on option or step 2 in that proposal, does it then come back that you're expecting council to find the funds to complete the extension if approval is given from DTMR?
If I could just perhaps interject there, Councillor Jones, thank you respectfully for your question. I think, though, that the question perhaps is outside the scope of the motion, and that there is certainly no, this doesn't give rise to any obligation for council to consider any funding at this point in time. Anything of that nature, from what I can read here, Mr. CEO, would have to be dealt with as a completely separate matter and fully revisited by council. Would that be correct? This resolution doesn't give any obligation as such? Yeah, Mr. CEO's nodded. So I think you're in safe territory there. Councillor Jones, you're happy with that? Yep. So we just want to clarify that this is not putting any responsibility on council, Councillor Duff, to fund it at this stage. If there was to be funding provided by council, that would have to be considered as a completely separate matter in addition to this. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just was hoping GM O'May may be able to just give us a little bit further information about this project, being that we have done some repair works to it, and just being that there's no report, of course, with the notice of motion. So GM O'May, through you, would appreciate an update.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So as Councillor Duff explained, we did have the initial project to do an extension there, but boat ramps are a funny thing. So the ones out there are owned by Sunwater, so they're the facility owner. We're the facility manager, so we have to look after them. But DTMR give the approval for the boat ramps. So following, and so that was with the Western Queensland process. We said going through DTMR approval can be a lengthy process, getting designs and getting the approval, so we didn't have time to complete that project. So we had the idea that we would actually try get designs and an approval done so that we had it in the drawer when there was a funding round available. And DTMR have funding sometimes, and as we were aware, identified now. Department of Ag and Fisheries have got a funding round out for boat ramp. So the idea would be to actually get the designs done, get the approval in place so that if there was funding available, we had it ready to go. So as we've talked about pipeline of projects, I would just note, and just to be clear with council, so we're looking at that 45 metre extension, getting the designs. We've put in the resolution options because we can have concrete block and have a fully in situ concrete thing. There are alternative boat ramp that might be lower level standards and obviously lower cost. So we've actually wanted to have a look at the cost because we probably won't get, and looking at the funding that round that's open available with Department of Fisheries, it's just shy of $1 million bucket for across the state. There's indications in there that projects under $100,000, projects with co-contributions will be given priority. So I've probably left this a little bit open because if we say we're going to design a 45 metre boat ramp, all the bells and whistles, concrete boat ramp, that might cost out at $230,000 and we might have a limited chance of securing that. So that's why we were keen to have a look at a couple of different options, put the pricing, because we may have more chance to get a $100,000 grant and do a 20 metre extension. We'll have the designs for the 45 metres and in 12 months' time, 2 years' time, 6 years' time, when there's another funding round, we may have to add the other 20 metres on. So that's what was probably in the second motion, and the second dot point is not to look at funding if we can fund the 45 metres in one foul swoop, but do we want to wait? So that's where I really just wanted to look at the options before we just commit to design and construct a X amount of boat ramps. So we don't get caught in that same situation we had last year that we didn't have the bucket. So that's just a bit of background from where we've drafted those resolutions from.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, GM O'May. Certainly, I'm fully supportive of this approach. I think the more projects we can have done, ready in the top drawer, and able to take advantage of funding opportunities when they're present, I think is excellent, and certainly where our focus as a council needs to be. So I'm fully supportive of this approach. I recognise that BP Dam is one of our premier tourist attractions, and certainly over these past 12 months has been well used with COVID traffic flowing through, traffic from areas that perhaps we wouldn't have seen before, and the increase in people buying caravans and camping is certainly, that's only expected to rise. So I'm fully supportive of this project. I've used that existing boat ramp and I can say it does need repair, and it's great that we're going to do the work to really understand what the options are and then see if we can get some funding into our region. So no, fully supportive, and just those words, priority project pipeline, is I think just music to our ears. So well done, thank you. And I look forward to more projects like this coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Henshin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I probably have a statement more than any question, and I'm all, as Councillor Shoemaker, like a wonderful facility, but put this in perspective, a 45 metre extension to the boat ramp, is that taking that down to roughly where the water is at the moment? Does anybody know?
That's correct. Yeah. So I think
that's
sorry.
what I would have expected. And my statement is the amount of money we're going to spend, or design something down there to get people to the bottom of the dam. It's at the next meeting, I would assume, going back through figures, we're going to be looking at 6.5% in the BP dam. I hope we never see the bottom of that boat ramp and the base of that dam, and I could understand some water and others would be fairly probably reluctant to put it there because they would be of the same opinion, not wanting to see the bottom of the dam. So that's just a statement I wanted to make. I don't have a problem. I think, I can understand the issues people have trying to get to the water's edge, and there's nothing more deterrent than having some dodgy boat ramp, or you've got the last 45 metres where you can't get your boat back out when everybody's bringing their boats out and the surface is wet and slippery. So, yeah, like I said, I hope we never see the bottom of the boat ramp.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Henshin. The councillors, No. I just want to pick up on one point, if I could, before we go to Councillor Duff for a right of reply. GM O'May, just with this funding application to is it the fishing infrastructure grants, is there an expectation that we co-fund that, did you say, or could you just clarify that?
Yeah,
Like BBRF or anything else, or how does that work?
No, through you, Mr Mayor, it is 100% funded. You can obviously co-contribute, and it's just the way the funding guidelines we were looking at, it does talk about preference, or priority will be given to projects that have matching funding or co-contribution, not necessarily matching, but some sort of co-contribution. We would be writing into the grant application like in-kind type contribution, but we weren't focused on council putting a contribution in. But my point was probably more, if we put in for $250,000 of a $1 million bucket and we were looking for 100% funding and not contributing, and we matched against someone else who's looking for $200,000 and they're putting in 100,000, we'd score lower. So it's just about trying to manage the success of an application, that we don't, ask for 25% of a funding bucket without sort of making a.
Thank you very much, General Manager O'May. I was just wanting to clarify that in relation to Councillor Jones's question, that we're not committing council to any funding or co-contribution here through the application. So thank you for clarifying that's not the case. Yeah, thank you. Okay, shall we go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. The next one is 16.4, notice of motion, Sherburgh Road resealing works at 220. I actually thought I had this for a standing committee meeting, but I surprised myself and put it up today. It was simply that a report be brought back to the September meeting of the Infrastructure Standing Committee with options to bring forward the scheduled resealing works on Sherburgh Road in order for the works to be completed prior to the year-end Christmas break. Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Look, and just speaking to that, it certainly wasn't to commit council to doing the work before Christmas. It was just that we give the infrastructure team the opportunity to bring back a report so that we can consider what options are available to perhaps do that, if it's technically able to be done in terms of the temperature, if it's going to be able to fit in with their work schedule in terms of their other priorities, and then council can consider it. It can be considered appropriate at a standing committee meeting. So I just want to clarify, not wanting to commit council to anything, just get a report brought back so we can at least consider it. That's really all I had. So anyone else wish to speak? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 16.5, notice of motion, dog registration fees at 221. I'd like to put forward a motion that a report be brought to the September meeting of the Executive Finance and Corporate Standing Committee as to the provision of a 50% pensioner concession on all dog registration fees and the issuing of dog registration renewal notices with rates notices. Do we have a seconder for such? Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Just to speak to this quickly, have had approaches from pensioners across the region who've got dogs. They've been doing their own research in relation to what other councils are doing. So what I've said to them is that I'd put it to the meeting that we take this back to the staff to bring a report to council so that we can consider what are going to be the finance implications for council's budget of doing this, and also what will be the logistical issues for council around the concession and applying that, and also their suggestion that we issue renewal notices with rates notices. I think there's a concern at the moment with a lot of the pensioners, particularly, that we don't issue renewal notices, and so often, or from time to time, perhaps, maybe not often, from time to time, pensioners won't remember to pay their dog renewal because they don't actually get something in the mail to remind them. And then they can end up in a situation where then they get a letter to remind them, which gives them, I think, a fair period of time still before they get an infringement notice. So they do get that. But I think it was just to say, look, can we do this more efficiently by perhaps at some stage in the future sending out renewal notices with the rates notices? I would hope that one day we could have most of our residents on email and we could be emailing a lot of this stuff out in time to come. And I know, and congratulate the staff, I saw a rates notice yesterday for a resident that had the nice flyer saying, would you like to go onto email? And you could tick the box and send it back to council and we'd put you onto email. So congratulations, GM, for putting that initiative forward too. Unfortunately, the people that had it don't have a computer, so they won't be ticking the box, but hopefully we'll get many that do. So, yeah, that was really just to speak to it. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the pensioners already, whether you're on sickness pension or anything like that, they already get that because we passed that in council last year. I think it was, we brought it through to council. So really we just need to remind the pensioners with regards to the dog renewal. Is that what we're...
So, Councillor, what happens at the moment is that if the dog is desexed, then they get the discount on the fee. So they get the 32 back to the 16.
Yep.
But at the moment, the $131 fee is not discounted for pensioners. And I believe in a number of other councils, not to say that that obliges us to do so, but in other councils they do discount that part. But we don't actually discount that for those dogs that aren't
For the
desexed.
entire dog, so...
Correct, for the entire
yeah.
dog, sorry, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm actually one person who really truly believes that if you're going to have a pet dog, it really should be desexed. So I'm all for Operation Wanted. Yay, Operation Wanted. So I believe that and if you're a pensioner, you really should have your dog desexed as well because it does save a lot of issues. But look, I think the 50% on the desexed dog is a great idea, like we already do. But I can't say I'm agreeable to it being on an entire dog for a pensioner. So because our pensioners now cover all, whether you're on, doesn't matter what pension you're on. And so I think we might be opening ourselves up to a few issues here with regards with people not having their dogs desexed and extra dogs on the streets.
Thank you. I think it was the fact that many of the pensioners were coming forward and saying that the majority of pensioners have the little house dogs. They might have 2 little house dogs, so to get them both desexed can be quite a few $100s. I'd hope that we don't have too many pensioners with big dogs that are roaming the streets and engaging in reproductive activities. But anyways, having said that, I'll go over to Mr CEO.
I was just going to say, Mr Mayor, we actually, Peter and I have spoken about this too. We actually do a fair bit of this already, but the resolution as put forward is just to bring the report back. We'd be pleased to bring the report back to identify clearly what we do and what currently concessions are in place. So that way everyone's on the same page and we know what we're doing. I would probably suggest we don't prosecute the argument here today because the whole argument about an entire dog versus a desexed dog can take some considerable time, and there is merit, and there is, well, when I say merit, there is merit in council's philosophy in the past of not discounting entire dogs because it does cause trouble, and so that debate could be quite happily had at the report stage, if that helps.
Thanks, Mr CEO. Thanks, Councillor Potter. Yeah. Okay, did anyone else want to speak for or against? No? Councillor Jones, would you like to move a motion in relation to cats? Okay. We'll have to be on our guard. We'll be looking out for that one. We'll go to the vote on this. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. And we'll look forward to that report. Council can consider it when it comes back. 17.1, list of correspondence pending completion of assessment report. It's at page 222. And the recommendation is that the list of correspondence pending completion of assessment report be received. Documents there as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Frolov. Councillor Potter, it's been a long day. Sorry, Ros. Seconder, Councillor Duff. Thank you. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Delegated authority report 17.2 at 223. Officer's recommendation that the delegated authority report be received with the attachments as enclosed. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Frolov. Second, Councillor Jones. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We have no questions on notice. So we'll now go to page 589, which includes an officer's recommendation. that Council considers the confidential reports listed below in a meeting closed to the public in accordance with Section 254J of the Local Government Regulation 2012, 19.1, Sale of Land for Overdue Rates and Charges, 19.2, Application seeking Council approval for reprieve from sale of land, both on the basis that an open meeting would on balance be contrary to the public interest as it deals with rating concessions in both cases. Do we have a move for such? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Seconded, Councillor Potter. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Meeting now closed at 4:49 p.m. I'll now move that we reopen the meeting at 5:06 p.m. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. We now have two items to attend to. Item 19.1, a sale of land for overdue rates and charges. And the recommendation is that pursuant to Section 142 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the South Burnett Regional Council resolves to sell the land described below in the schedule for overdue rates and charges, and Council delegate to the Chief Executive Officer its powers to take all further steps under Chapter 4, Part 12, Division 3 of the Local Government Regulation 2012 to effect sale of land, including, for the avoidance of doubt, the power to end sale procedures. As stated in the schedule, councillors, which you have in front of you for those three properties. Do we have a mover for such? Councillor Jones, seconder. Councillor Froloff. Speakers? To the vote. In favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 19.2. Officer's recommendation is...
Excuse me, Mr Mayor.
Yes, sorry, thank you.
You're right. I'd like to declare a conflict of interest with this one, please.
Yes, and councillor, would it be your preference that you leave the room, or would you like the matter determined by council?
I'd prefer to leave the room.
Okay, so you voluntarily leave the room until the matter is attended to, having disclosed a declarable conflict of interest. Thank you. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to declare a conflict of interest and I'd like to advise the chamber that I would like to vacate the chambers on this 19.2.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. So Council, both Councillors Potter and Councillor Henson have disclosed declarable conflict of interest, and in doing so have elected to leave the meeting and stay away until the matter has been finalised. Okay, so we'll now note that both councillors have left the meeting and that a quorum remains, and the recommendation for consideration of council is that council notes that the financial hardship policy, Statutory 012, is not extended to include company and family trusts, and a formal payment arrangement and 12-month reprieve is not agreed to, and the sale of land process continues as per Part 12 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, and council supports an industry-led initiative to develop a program that links builders to landowners, allowing council to maintain independence in relation to individual developments. Okay, do we have a move for such? Councillor Jones, a seconder. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. So we have that recommendation there as presented and read. Council, speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, can we bring councillors back in? Thank you, councillor. Okay, we now welcome back Councillor Potter and Councillor Henson to the meeting at 5:10 p.m. I'll now call the meeting to close as all matters have been attended to, and thank you all for your attendance. It's been a big day, but a productive day.